Chapter 1051. Taisetsu, who was lying on the sofa, emitted some faint red mist from his body. It was quickly absorbed by the pendant on the necklace around Taisetsu's neck. The key-like pendant was the Zhanlu sword. The faint red mist emitted from Taisetsu's body gradually decreased until it stopped emitting. He yawned, sat up, and loosened his neck. He only felt that his spirit was refreshed, and he seemed to be much more comfortable. "You're awake." "Yu-yi, Mississippi." Taisetsu quickly stood up. Mississippi maid came to Taisetsu with a smile and glanced at the pendant around his neck. Zhanlu is a sword of the king. Although the fastest way to master the power of the sword is through killing, it's not good to kill too much. So it will help you purify the excess killing aura in your body. Taisetsu suddenly understood. No wonder the heavy feeling had almost disappeared after a nap. "What are we going to do now?" Taisetsu asked refreshingly. "Follow me." Mississippi maid brought Taisetsu to the boss's study. Taisetsu had been to the study several times, so he was familiar with it. "What exactly does this study look like?" "Just like those old bookstores that specialized in selling all kinds of old books. Even those that were hard to find on the market could be found in the old bookstores hidden in the depths of the street corners." Under Taisetsu's curious gaze, Mississippi maid walked directly to a bookcase and waved her hand. The thick hardcover books on the bookcase trembled slightly. Soon, a thick book flew out from the top right corner of the bookcase and fell into Yuye's hand. Miss Maid turned around while turning the pages of the thick booklet on this side. "What's this?" Taisetsu asked curiously. Yuyi raised her head and smiled. "An old account book. This is what we're going to do next." His white fingers gently stroked a page on the thick book, so some light smoke floated out of this page. Then, it combined into words one by one in front of Daz. Looking at these floating words, Taisetsu was stunned. But these words quickly turned into light smoke and dissipated in front of Taisetsu's eyes. "Did you see it clearly?" Yuyi asked softly. Taisetsu nodded subconsciously. Then he said with a strange expression, This is a deal from 2,000 years ago?" It seemed that Mississippi maid was born 300 or 400 years ago. Yuyi nodded. "To be exact, it's a deal that hasn't been completed yet. The thing that the customer asked for needs to be fulfilled soon." Taisetsu was a little dizzy, rubbing his chin. "This customer, how much did he pay?" "There's always an equivalent." Yuyi chuckled. "What we have to do is to satisfy the customer's request. That's all." Does our boss know?" Taisetsu asked curiously. "Master is very studious," Mississippi maid said softly. "When he first took over, he flipped through a lot of account books. In order to complete this deal, he began to prepare early. For example, handing over Zhanlu to you and making you a Black Soul envoy." Taisetsu scratched his head. "I heard from Sister Number 18 that there are several terrifying Black Soul envoys. Wouldn't it be better for them to do it than for me, a newbie?" "They are all on vacation." Yuyi said indifferently. "Master means that he doesn't intend to let their vacation end early. Besides, we consumed a lot of Black Soul envoys before. It's time to replenish some. It's considered various considerations." Taisetsu was thoughtful. Yuyi closed the booklet in her hand and put it back to its original place. She seemed to ponder for a while, then took out a much thinner booklet from another bookcase. But she didn't open the booklet. Instead, she opened a small distorted space and threw the booklet in. Taisetsu looked at it curiously, but didn't ask too much. Yuyi said, "There are different types of Black Soul envoys. In addition to finding customers, there are also some like you, who are responsible for fighting. Of course, there are also some who are responsible for collecting accounts. There's a guy whose vacation is about to end, so I prepared a job for him in advance." He felt that the person who was assigned a job by this maid would be very unhappy now. "Then let's go." "Oh, okay." Taisetsu nodded quickly. Crouching Dragon Villa. Yunhui asked someone to cook some bird's nest porridge. Then, he personally brought it to Mr. Blind. The Crouching Dragon Mountain Villa was used to entertain the people of the Tao world. The ingredients here were all top-notch. It seemed that not all the people of the Tao world could abstain from eating. Many of them still chose to eat. Furthermore, they had very strict requirements for the ingredient. Taoist Master Qing Xiazi, eat something to replenish your essence energy. Thank you. Mr. Blind, who had woken up from his meditation, nodded. After a period of teasing, his complexion looked better. However, he still looked like a patient who had just recovered from a serious illness and spoke weakly. Yun Hui had many questions in his heart as he watched Mr. Blind slowly eat. However, he still held back and didn't ask. For example, Taoist Master Qing Xiazi was obviously a great sinner of the Tao world, but he could receive preferential treatment from the administration. Because of his request, the higher-ups of the administration had even disturbed the senior who had entered the martial Tao in the middle of the night. Are you very curious about my relationship with the administration? After drinking a few mouthfuls of bird's nest porridge, Mr. Blind stopped. Yun Hui hesitated for a while before nodding. However, when he thought about how this senior seemed to be blind, he hurriedly said, Yun Hui has many questions in his heart. Mr. Blind was silent for a while before he suddenly asked, Are you a disciple of Kunlun? Who is your master? Yun Hui hurriedly said, My master is Taoist Daofeng, a disciple of Grandmaster Baijia. Daofeng. Mr. Blind's expression changed slightly as he looked at Yun Hui. Is your master doing well? To be honest, Junior's master passed away 10 years ago. Yun Hui's expression was somewhat gloomy. My master suffered a very serious injury in the past. Grandmaster has been using various methods to keep her alive, but in the end, he was unable to save her. Daofeng is Mr. Baijia's last disciple, Mr. Blind said softly. Senior, do you know my master? Yun Hui's attitude involuntarily became more respectful. Yes, and Mr. Blind was silent for a while before he suddenly said, If I say that your master was seriously injured and passed away because of me, what would you do? Yun Hui was suddenly startled. Then, he took a deep breath and said in a slightly heavy voice, Senior, I just flipped through some of the administration's files, especially about you. However, most of the information is encrypted and locked. With my current authority, I can't access it at all. Logically speaking, you've already been banished from Kelowna's Tao world, but the administration still treats you as an honored guest. I really don't understand. Mr. Blind sighed and said, You clearly want to know about your master, but you're asking about my relationship with the administration. You can keep your composure. Mr. Baijia has a pretty good grand disciple. Yun Hui said solemnly, I heard from the people in the villa that Grandmaster has come to visit you several times in the past 2 days. Since Grandmaster and you know each other and didn't do anything to you, I dare not overstep my boundaries. Fine. Mr. Blind sighed. You're Daofeng's disciple, so there's no harm in telling you. The reason why the authority treated me differently was because I had helped them with some feng shui matters. There's a huge feng shui array underground in the capital today that's used to suppress the light from Providence in Xian Nation. The development of Xian Nation over the past few decades is more or less due to the array underground in the capital. You should understand now. Yun Hui suddenly opened his eyes, the shock in his heart reaching its peak. If what this great sinner Qing Xiazi said was true, then his contributions to the nation today would be immeasurable. Ordinary people might not believe in feng shui metaphysics, but as a member of the Tao world, Yun Hui was very clear about it. He had set up a feng shui array for Xian Nation and strengthened its national light day by day. To the nation, this great sinner was a great contributor. After all, the administration and the Tao world were 2 different systems. It was no wonder that Qing Xiazi's phone call could make the higher-ups of the administration pay so much attention to him. The right time, place, and people. Mr. Blind shook his head and said, I can only create the right time and place, but development ultimately depends on people. As a nation. If this nation didn't have a group of people who were willing to work hard for the nation, it wouldn't have developed to its current state. As the saying goes, everything depends on people. People are the foundation. What I did was just adding fuel to the fire. No matter what, you have indeed contributed to the nation. Yun Hui bowed respectfully to Mr. Blind. However, when he raised his head, his gaze had already become stern. Sir, please tell me, how did my master get seriously injured? Why was he implicated by you? Mr. Blind said, Long Shah. Back then, I did something wrong and eventually attracted the Long Shah. The appearance of the Long Shah shook the entire dragon vein in Kelowna. The Shinryu in Kelowna suppressed it with all their might. Otherwise, the world would have descended into chaos. The Long Shah could only be left to us to deal with. Your master got injured in the process of dealing with the Long Shah. It's a pity. She is very likely to be the next Tao-querying realm Taoist in Kelowna. However, her mystic attack was destroyed by the Long Shah and there was no possibility of her recultivation. Yun Hui clenched his fists. The Mr. Blind before him was still weak and defenseless. This porridge is a little cold. I'll heat it up for you. Just as Yun Hui took the bowl and left, a faint voice came from behind him. I'm sorry. Yun Hui stopped but didn't turn around. He only said in a low voice, Let's not talk about who was wrong first. At the very least, I now know that Master did it to save the world. For now, that's enough. There was the sound of the door closing. Mr. Blind sat quietly. Outside the house, there was the sound of the wind rustling the sycamore tree. The tree had been planted by Dao Feng many years ago with seeds brought from Kunlun. I don't believe in love. I'll leave the pavilion with a long regret. My tears will sober me up easily. Mr. Blind slowly walked to the window and leaned against the railing. He whispered, Time will only hasten one's aging. Instead of worrying so much, it's better to drink a pot of turbid wine. Under the shadow of the sycamore tree, a cold and deep man's voice came. Under the faint light and moonlight, this man gradually walked over. He was wearing a loose plain tang suit. He held a pot of wine in his hand. His steps weren't fast, but it only took him 2 steps to reach Mr. Blind. This man had an ordinary appearance. He looked like he was in his 30s. However, his sideburns were white. I was in a hurry when I came out. So, I took a bottle of old wine from the National Treasury and came to meet my old friend. The man smiled. Mr. Blind nodded. You're quite fast. The man flipped in through the window and said casually, The people from the administration said they still need to arrange a plane. I said there's no need. It's only a few 100 kilometers from the capital to Mount Tai. It's a good opportunity for me to exercise. However, just as the man sat down, he suddenly coughed a few times. This made Mr. Blind frown. You're injured? Injured my lung. The man didn't have any intention of hiding it. Instead, he said frankly, Last year, I fought with someone and almost died. However, you know me. As long as I don't die, I'll recover quickly. It's just that those people from the administration have more than 10 doctors. They wait on me every day. Sometimes it's quite annoying. Mr. Blind said seriously, There aren't many people who can hurt you. The white-haired man said casually, The little princess of Xianyuan Palace is not someone to be trifled with. However, I was satisfied with that fight. Although I was half dead, the little princess didn't have it easy either. However, it's a pity that the little princess didn't use the power of the Yellow Emperor. She only used the power of Ba to fight with me. Otherwise, the grass on my grave would be a bit high. Ha ha. Come, don't talk. Have a taste of this wine. Mr. Blind shook his head. He took out a small porcelain bottle from his pocket and threw it in front of the man. Your injuries haven't healed yet. How can your strength decline? What we're going to face next doesn't allow for the slightest bit of carelessness. The man opened the bottle but didn't consume it immediately. He only frowned and said, "Is it really that serious?" Mr. Blind said, "Heaven and earth have a special trajectory. Our Bai sect believes that whether it's the past, the present, or even the future, everything has been fixed. It's like having a book that has been written long ago, and you can see everything in this book. You will find that everything is following the rules." The man frowned and asked curiously, "Qing Xiazi, what did you see in this book? War. Whose war?" Chapter 1052. Just as Yun Hui was walking along the corridor, a shadow flashed past his eyes. Yun Hui was shocked. He hurriedly turned around and saw that the shadow that flashed past wasn't an outsider, but his colleague, Old Wolf. "What's wrong with you? You look like you've lost your soul." Old Wolf frowned. "Nothing, I'm just thinking about something." Yun Hui shook his head and pulled himself together. "Why are you here?" Old Wolf did not pay much attention to Yun Hui. He said, "I'm patrolling the area to see if the person who ambushed us is still around. That person took advantage of the empty Crouching Dragon Villa to sneak in and ambush Mr. Blind. It was possible that he was still hiding and waiting for the next opportunity." "Oh right, I just contacted the Kuan Prung Villa." Old Wolf leaned against the wall and lit his tobacco pipe. He smoked as he said, "There are 2 logistics personnel left at the Kuan Prung Villa. The situation there is the same as here." Yun Hui thought to himself, "It's all useless information." Yun Hui leaned against the wall beside Old Wolf. He looked at the courtyard in front of him and did not say anything. Old Wolf looked at him curiously and suddenly said, "Do you want a puff?" Yun Hui shook his head and said, "No. Don't smoke so much just because you're a monster." Old Wolf only smiled and did not say anything. Old Wolf suddenly took out a necklace from his neck. The necklace was connected to a pendant, and there was a small photo hidden inside. Yun Hui had worked with Old Wolf for more than a year, but he had only seen the photo inside the necklace twice. "Thinking about your nephew again?" Yun Hui asked curiously. He remembered Old Wolf saying that he had an elder sister. But the elder sister had passed away long ago, leaving behind a pair of children. However, the Old Wolf had never mentioned anything about the 2 children. "I'm just looking around." Old Wolf lowered his head and smoked his tobacco pipe. The white smoke gradually blurred under the orange light of the corridor. As he looked, Yun Hui suddenly said, "Have a puff." Old Wolf placed the pipe in front of Yun Hui. He imitated Yun Hui and took a puff. A strong taste spread in his mouth, followed by a feeling of dizziness. It was as if time had slowed down, and the sounds around him gradually faded away. This was a very bad state. Yun Hui subconsciously channeled the mana in his qi, wanting to expel these bad things. "Don't circulate your energy," Old Wolf said in a low voice. "The physique of a cultivator is strong enough. This kind of anesthesia won't do you any harm. Relax. Let time slow down like this. Don't think about anything. Don't think about it." Yun Hui subconsciously stopped the flow of his magic power and took a deep breath. Time gradually slowed down. Smoke slowly drifted out from the incense burner. The stove was lit with red sandalwood, which could help one concentrate and calm their qi. However, the white-haired man did not seem to like this kind of practice. Or rather, he was in a bad mood. He flicked his finger, and a gust of wind instantly extinguished the burning red sandalwood in the incense burner. The bottle of old wine from the National Treasury was still unopened and was quietly placed on the coffee table. It wasn't easy for this country to have a few years of peace. He looked at Mr. Blind and said slowly, "There's actually nothing bad about the world being peaceful. What do you want me to do?" Mr. Blind coughed lightly and said, "According to the intelligence, a huge stone pillar seemed to have appeared at the place where the Taoists and demons disappeared. If I'm not wrong, it's very likely that the other 6 pillars will appear in the near future." 7 pillars? Mr. Blind nodded and said in a low voice, "This is probably the 7 stars illuminating spirit array that I created back then. Through the corresponding 7 pillars, they are buried in the 7 important nodes of the Earth's ley lines. Finally, a special region is formed. This region is like a blessing, a switch that opens the spiritual energy of the earth. It's so simple. It can revive the spiritual energy? The white-haired man said in surprise. Mr. Blind shook his head and said, "Actually, things in this world are very simple. Turn on the tap and water will flow out. Fertilize the seeds and they will grow. As long as people have food and water, they will be able to survive." The white-haired man also shook his head, but the appearance of the first tap took a lot of time. Mr. Blind said seriously, "Once this formation is completed, it will release the spirit chi hidden in the ground endlessly, as if it is releasing blood. Moreover, this formation is a little overbearing. If all the dragon veins, earth veins, and spirit veins in the divine land are taken as the meridians and blood vessels of a human, then this formation is equivalent to cutting a hole in the human carotid artery. How did you think of such a dangerous thing back then?" The white-haired man looked at Mr. Blind and narrowed his eyes. Mr. Blind smiled bitterly. "I was young and reckless." The white-haired man frowned. "Where are the other 6 nodes?" Mr. Blind said, "When I tried to use this array, I already caused the original nodes of Mount Tai to collapse. After a few decades, the ley lines automatically healed, but the nodes have changed. I need some time to calculate the other 6 nodes. However, there are too many nodes in the ley lines. This is only the first node, but there are too many combinations. I'm afraid it will be easier to calculate after the second pillar appears." "Do we need to wait for the second pillar to appear?" The white-haired man nodded. At this moment, a mobile phone rang. It was the special triple-proof mobile phone of the administration. He glanced at it and found it was a message. "The people from the administration will be here soon." He looked at Mr. Blind. "We will support you with all our strength." As he said that, he suddenly slapped the bottle of wine on the tea table. This slap didn't break the bottle of wine, instead, it directly slammed into the ground. At the place where the wine bottle was originally, a deep hole was formed. He smiled. "Since we have something important to do, let's wait until we are done with it before opening it. Let's keep the wine for a while. Maybe it can absorb some of the earth's energy and taste better." Mr. Blind dipped his finger in some water and wrote a few words on the tea table. The white-haired man glanced at it and found it was a name. He looked at Mr. Blind curiously and frowned. Mr. Blind said softly, "If the spirit aura has recovered and we have failed, then let's look for the person with this name all over the country." Then, Mr. Blind didn't say anything, but directly wiped the water stains on the tea table. The white-haired man's face became more serious because of this. Rumble! Suddenly there was a vibration. This made Taoist Huangmu stand up abruptly like a bird startled by the twang of a bough. Before this, he had been waiting for Ming Tushan's rescue, so he had been healing himself in the turtle shell. "That thing found us?" Taoist Huangmu's face was extremely ugly. Ming Tushan, who was also meditating, slowly opened his eyes. "Calm down, Taoist Huangmu. We just touched a rock under the ground." This turtle shell had been moving underground in this strange place, so it naturally touched a rock underground. Taoist Huangmu heaved a sigh of relief, but his face was still very ugly. He had escaped for quite some time, but during this period of time, other than him, he had not found any other survivors. It was very likely that other than the few here, the elites of the Tao and the demon realm had all perished under that terrifying attack. This was a very despairing thought. "I didn't expect it to be a piece of mithril, such a big piece," Ming Tushan suddenly said. This was probably the so-called rock they had touched. Mithril wasn't very useful in Kelowna's Tao world, but it was said that it was very popular in the Western World's Magician Association. It was even traded in grams and was extremely precious. However, after experiencing that terrifying attack, Huangmu had long lost the desire to search for treasures here. Perhaps the other people in the turtle shell also didn't have this desire. Strange. Immortal Huanyang suddenly frowned. Taoist Huanyang, did you find anything? Hundred Tribulation Taoist asked. Immortal Huanyang said hesitantly, Guys, we found a lot of heavenly materials and earthly treasures in the forest, which seemed to be produced in Kelowna. Why did we find such a big piece of mithril here? This question startled everyone. At first, they came to this strange place because of the jade pillar that was emitting a large amount of spiritual qi. After they landed, they saw countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures in the forest. They subconsciously thought that this place was some unknown secret realm in the divine land. Who would have thought that they would find something that belonged to the Western extraordinary world? That weird little girl called us purchasers. She wanted us to buy the things she collected. Hundred Tribulations Taoist recalled what that thing had said after it appeared. Yu San Yang. Immortal Huanyang's heart jumped. Is this place? It's hard to say. Hundred Tribulation Taoist shook his head. Ming Tushan said at this moment, Guys, I suddenly have an idea. Why don't you consider it? Taoist Tushan, please go ahead. Hundred Tribulation Taoist hurriedly said. Ming Tushan said, Every place should have a boundary. If this place is also a secret realm, then there must be a limit to its size. If we keep going underground, will we reach this limit? Elder Tushan, you mean if we can find the limit and the boundary of the secret area, we can break the space of the secret area and leave this place? Immortal Huanyang soon understood. That's right. Ming Tushan nodded. What do you think? They all remained silent for a while. At last, Hundred Tribulation Taoist said, We have no other choice but to try. Taoist Tushan, please. But, Hundred Tribulation Taoist changed his tone. I want to go back and have a look. President. Immortal Huanyang and Taoist Huangmu looked at Hundred Tribulation Taoist with confusion. Hundred Tribulation Taoist said blandly, Huanyang, you take these two things. If anything happens to me, please take them to Kunlun. Hundred Tribulation Taoist took off a thumb ring and a small bag from his waist, handing them to Immortal Huanyang. This thumb ring is... Immortal Huanyang was shocked. He was familiar with this thumb ring. It was the token of Kunlun's sect master. As for this bag, it was something that Hundred Tribulation Taoist always carried with him. It had a small universe space that could store hundreds of things. Instantly, Immortal Huanyang understood what Hundred Tribulation Taoist meant. The others also reacted quickly. Only to stay with Hundred Tribulation Taoist and search for survivors, it wasn't easy for him to escape from that thing's clutches. President, you're the mainstay of Kelowna's Tao world. You can't take the risk. Taoist Huangmu hurriedly advised. Save as many as you can. You're still young and have a long way to go. Hundred Tribulation Taoist shook his head. No need to persuade me. I've made up my mind. If you can find a way out, that'll be the best. Just as he finished speaking, Hundred Tribulation Taoist decisively escaped from the turtle shell. The others were silent. Ming Tushan sighed and said slowly, Everyone, I'm going to start diving. Everyone. Don't let Hundred Tribulation Taoist down. Searching for survivors should be one of the reasons. The other reason should be to delay that thing, right? If the turtle shell that was hidden underground was discovered, then he might not be so lucky to escape the calamity the next time it happened. When Hundred Tribulation Taoist drilled out of the ground, he almost thought that he had lost his way. If he had not seen so many demon and Taoist corpses on the ground, he would have thought so. This place had obviously suffered a destructive attack, but not long after, everything had returned to its original state. Hundred Tribulation Taoist could still distinguish between reality and illusion. Then, there was only one possibility. In a short time, this place had been manipulated and returned to its original state. This was not something that could be done by any known means. Hundred Tribulation Taoist's heart sank. What kind of terrifying existence were they facing? Releasing the corpses, Hundred Tribulation Taoist tried his best to search for survivors or demons. However, as time went on, Hundred Tribulation Taoist only felt a deep despair. Some of the dead ones were once all-powerful, some had lived a glorious life, some were giants of the monster clan, and of course, some were young talents. Such a miserable situation reminded Hundred Tribulation Taoist of the dragon spirit disaster on Mount Tai dozens of years ago. The two worlds had suffered a great loss. After dozens of years, they finally recovered. Hundred Tribulation Taoist dragged the corpses back with tears. He found a place in the forest and buried the corpses one by one. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I hope you can continue to comprehend the great Tao in the next life. Hundred Tribulation Taoist sighed in front of the earth graves. However, at this moment, a slight noise alerted the Hundred Tribulations Taoist. He looked over and saw a palm sticking out from under an ancient tree. Chapter 1053. After the hand reached out, it tried to break open the soil around it. Seeing this, Hundred Tribulation Taoist hurriedly walked over and used his Taoist magic arts to loosen the soil under the ancient tree. A young Taoist quickly crawled out of the pit and greedily breathed in the surrounding air. The young Taoist quickly looks around. Senior Hundred Tribulations. What the hell is going on? Why am I buried in the ground? Where's that monster from the Vermilion Bird tribe? Hundred Tribulation Taoist was stunned. You don't know? The young Taoist shook his head. That monster from the Vermilion Bird tribe suddenly rushed towards me, but I don't know why, I suddenly lost consciousness. Then, when I woke up, I found myself buried in the ground, and then I saw you, President. Hundred Tribulation Taoist frowned. He recognized this young guy. At the beginning, they had some conflicts because they found the bodies of this young guy's teacher and another monster from the Vermilion Bird tribe. But he and the priest of the Vermilion Bird tribe, Chu Xinghe, attacked at the same time and knocked them out. Could it be that this young guy escaped because he fainted? President, what's that? The young Taoist saw the graves behind Hundred Tribulation Taoist and couldn't help but ask in a trembling voice. These are. Hundred Tribulation Taoist said bitterly, your seniors and fellow Taoists have all died. What? The young Taoist was shocked. Bang! All of a sudden, a beam of red light shot out from the forest. The Hundred Tribulations Taoist's expression changed slightly. He pulled the young Taoist's arm and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. Found it was a cold voice. Hundred Tribulation Taoist's expression changed dramatically. He saw a figure pass through the shadows of the trees at an extremely fast speed and appear in front of him and the young Taoist. It's that thing. What's that? The young Taoist became extremely frightened at this moment. It's the murderer who slaughtered those Taoist monsters in the graves. The Hundred Tribulations Taoist took a deep breath and said, this is only one of them. There are many of them. Little guy, you should leave when you have the chance. The thing in front of him. Gaia's eyes locked onto the Hundred Tribulations Taoist and slowly raised the gun on his arm. The sharp and terrifying rays of light shot out once again, and just like before, these rays of light instantly dispersed. Not only were they powerful, but they were also agile. The Hundred Tribulations Taoist hurriedly took out an octagonal bronze mirror and blocked the incoming beams of light. However, the impact of the explosion was extremely strong, and the young Taoist was instantly flung away by the force of the impact. At this moment, Gaia raised his other arm. This time, the two guns fired at the same time. Hundred Tribulation Taoist cursed inwardly. He didn't have time to care about this young guy, so he directly threw out the bronze mirror in his hand. After that, the bronze mirror directly flew in front of the young Taoist. Bang bang! The beams of light shot out from Gaia's guns again, and within a radius of 10 meters, it was bombarded by these beams of light. Facing this dense attack of light, the Hundred Tribulations Taoist's hands emitted a golden light. He rushed into the range of these beams of light and directly slapped towards them. Boom 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 boom. After Hundred Tribulations Taoist's hands slapped the beams of light, they were instantly distorted and then deflected to one side. The 100 Tribulations Taoist took a round of shooting in this way. President! The young Taoist was both surprised and happy at this moment. The 100 Tribulations Taoist took a look at him, and couldn't help frowning, because he found that this little guy didn't suffer any attack at all. The 100 Tribulations Taoist's mind turned rapidly. Could it be that this weird thing didn't take this little guy as its target? But why was that? Was it because this little guy didn't touch anything here? Yes. This little guy was knocked out by him at the beginning, so he didn't participate in the later collection. As a 100 Tribulations Taoist, his memory was extremely powerful. At this moment, he recalled the memory of that time, and finally found that there was no battle puppet-like thing standing beside this little guy. "What's your name?" The 100 Tribulations Taoist turned his head and asked Gaia while being vigilant. Jiangzua. Jiangzua. Lucky little guy, maybe you can survive. The 100 Tribulations Taoist took a deep breath, and suddenly his eyes lit up, pushing his palms towards Jiangzua. At this moment, a huge airflow rushed out, and suddenly Jiangzua's body was overturned. Jiangzua didn't expect this, and was directly thrown into the forest. But Gaia didn't do anything, it didn't even look at Jiangzua, who was being sent away. Sure enough, the 100 Tribulations Taoist took a deep breath. Jiangzua wasn't the target of this horrible thing. Then, the 100 Tribulations Taoist took a deep look at Gaia and slowly said, "It's time to settle the debt of the Taoist Association." Gaia didn't move, its purple pupils kept flashing. The 100 Tribulations Taoist breathed in a strange way, his chest rising and falling. Suddenly, his body began to expand rapidly. It wasn't a simple expansion, but the muscles of his body began to grow rapidly, and the growth of his body exceeded the capacity of the Taoist robe, directly bursting the upper part of his Taoist robe. He turned from a shriveled old man into an unusually strong man in the blink of an eye. At the same time, several golden lights flashed on the 100 Tribulations Taoist's body. Above his head, there was a strange cover with 9 dragons on it, and it spat out samadhi true fire, which turned into 9 fire dragons, shuttling around the 100 Tribulations Taoist. There was a mirror on each side of him, one black and one white. Each of his hands held an ancient sword. The left sword was engraved with the words immortal slaying, and the right sword was engraved with the words male and female. Danger level increased, output mode adjusted, annihilation. After Gaia's purple eyes flashed, it raised the guns in both hands at the same time, and 2 thicker light beams shot out at the same time. The 100 Tribulations Taoist's eyes lit up, and he suddenly shouted, "Yin Yang Mirror!" The black mirror directly blocked in front of the 100 Tribulations Taoist, and the 2 light beams were directly absorbed by the black mirror. The 100 Tribulations Taoist's arm, which was holding the male and female swords, suddenly waved, and the white mirror shot out. It was divided into 2, then 4, then 8. In the blink of an eye, there were 64 mirror images around Gaia. At the same time, 2 light beams shot out from the black mirror. The light beams shot into the 2 white mirror images. The white mirror directly shot out 2 light beams. The 64 white mirrors kept reflecting and refracting the light beams. Bang! The 2 light beams finally reflected on Gaia's body. Dust was flying in front of him, but the 100 Tribulations Taoist didn't relax at all. Instead, he held the 2 swords tightly and became alert. Sure enough, a figure rushed out from the dust. Gaia. At this time, the guns in Gaia's hands changed again. Her arms turned into 2 sharp blades, rushing toward the 100 Tribulations Taoist. Ding! 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 The collision between the 2 made a continuous sound, and the speed was beyond the limit of vision. Facing Gaia, the 100 Tribulations Taoist didn't fall into a disadvantage. Instead, he faintly suppressed her. But the 100 Tribulations Taoist knew that he couldn't fight for a long time, because there was more than one thing. His magical power was like the sea, and the huge magical power surged in his body and turned into a golden flame that burst out from the 100 Tribulations Taoist's body. At this time, the strange cover above his head suddenly shot out 9 huge rumbles, rushing towards the sky from all directions. The 9 fire dragons merged into one in the sky, turning into an even bigger fire dragon, which then rushed downwards. Gaia raised her head, her purple eyes flashed, and the sharp blades on her arms directly crossed above her head. Bang! The forest within dozens of meters was instantly destroyed by the impact of the huge fire dragon, like the explosion of a tactical missile. When everything calmed down, there was a huge pit several meters deep on the ground. In the center of the pit, one of Gaia's right arms had disappeared, and the remaining left arm hung down naturally. Her purple eyes flickered incessantly at this moment. But at this time, a cold light flashed, and Gaia's head was instantly cut off. The 100 Tribulations Taoist. The decapitated head rolled into the deep pit, and Gaia's body fell to the ground at the same time. The 100 Tribulations Taoist breathed a sigh of relief, and felt the magical power in his body was less than 40% of usual. The head fell to the ground, but the purple eyes were still flashing, looking at the 100 Tribulations Taoist. Such eyes made the 100 Tribulations Taoist shudder. But soon, the head suddenly turned into ashes and dissipated into the air. Her body was also gone at this moment. The 100 Tribulations Taoist didn't feel happy at all, but his face darkened. Because he could clearly feel that something came from behind him. The 100 Tribulations Taoist slowly turned around and looked at the top of the pit, only to see 6 figures flying up from the pit. 6 Gaias. Really, they don't respect their elders at all. The 100 Tribulations Taoist held his sword with both hands and rushed up to the sky, slashing at one of the Gaias. Tremors, huge sounds, as well as terrifying magic power fluctuations. Not far away there was a place. When he opened his eyes, Yenlu found that there was some mud on his body. No, half of his body was buried in the mud. It was a very strange situation, but he quickly got up and recalled what happened before he fainted. Jasmine. Yenlu powerlessly knelt on the ground as he painfully gripped the dirt on the ground. Suddenly, Yenlu raised his head and looked at his surroundings. He was in so much pain that he didn't notice anything at first, but at this moment, he realized that there were actually quite a few demon corpses around him. He didn't know what happened, but the terrifying magical power kept coming from afar. Who was fighting where? This kind of terrifying dermic power fluctuation made Yenlu's heart palpitate even though he was so far away. There seemed to be only a few people in the Divine Land's Tao world who had such terrifying dermic power. Was it the Tao Association's president, the 100 Tribulations Taoist, or Huanyang? In the face of such a powerful force, Yenlu suddenly punched the mud. The force of his punch instantly sent the mud flying. Jasmine! Jasmine! Yenlu suddenly raised his head and shouted, "Tao world! I want all of you to die with me." However, he didn't have a long lifespan because of his terminated meridians. To the Vermilion Bird clan, the ice-cold terminated meridians were equivalent to a fatal disease. The continuous ice-cold chi in his body offset the power of the Vermilion Bird clan's flame bit by bit. When the flame power in his body was completely exhausted, it was equivalent to his life coming to an end. "I can't die." Yenlu gritted his teeth and suddenly looked at the demon corpses beside him. There were corpses from the Vermilion Bird clan, the White Tiger clan, the Azure Dragon clan, the Black Tortoise clan. There were even a few corpses from the Tao world. "I can't die." His gaze became abnormally ferocious. Yenlu immediately pounced on the corpse of a fellow Vermilion Bird clan member, which was still warm. "I can't die." His hands trembled, and then he stabbed into the heart of this corpse. He dug out the heart that was still warm. "I can't die." He swallowed it. He bit into the heart, and fresh blood instantly splattered out. Yenlu raised his head and swallowed the heart into his stomach. Instantly, a blazing aura soared in his body, suppressing the cold illness in his body. Like a wild beast that had gone crazy from hunger, Yenlu once again bit at this corpse, crazily devouring the flesh and blood of this corpse. 1 corpse, 2 corpses, 3 corpses, even though they were already dead, the bodies of these powerful demons and Taoists still contained an enormous amount of life essence. The flame power of his fellow clansmen could replenish the loss of his life essence, and the rest could continuously strengthen his life force. After an unknown amount of time, the surrounding corpses were completely devoured by Yenlu. It's still not enough. His eyes were already bloodshot, and he was on the verge of losing his mind. Suddenly, an active blazing power attracted him. As if by instinct, Yenlu followed that blazing power and came to a certain place in this forest. Flaming Earth Core Lingji Mushroom. What appeared in front of Yenlu was the Lingji mushroom that had caused the death of his beloved. Yenlu quickly walked in front of this Lingji mushroom, and without saying anything, he pulled out this Lingji mushroom, put it into his mouth, and directly swallowed it. Devouring, a terrifying blazing fire burned fiercely in his body, and Yenlu only felt as if he was about to explode. Inquiry. Subscriber, do you want to buy the Flaming Earth Core Lingji mushroom? Suddenly, such a voice rang out behind Yenlu. He forcibly endured the power of the Lingji mushroom in his body, as well as the eruption of his life force after devouring so many demon Taoists, and turned around. A little girl with purple eyes and purple hair stood quietly behind him without him noticing. Suggestion. Subscriber has already used the Flaming Earth Core Lingji mushroom, please pay the usage fee as soon as possible. The violent power crazily exploded in Yenlu's body, and he didn't listen to the little girl's words at all. The violent power in his body even started to attack his consciousness. Ah! Yenlu howled in pain and then directly fell to the ground, unconscious. At this moment, the purple light in Gaia's eyes kept flickering. Transaction interrupted. Scanning. Is subscriber's body has chaotic energy flow. Subscriber's life force is decreasing. Subscriber is unable to continue the transaction. Activating emergency plan. A transaction in progress, unable to be interrupted. A suggestion. Help subscriber until transaction resumes. Confirm. At this time, Gaia waved his hand and lifted Flameloot up. Then he pointed at Flameloot's forehead. Energy combing. Scanning again. Subscriber's body has abnormal genes, causing the structure to be unstable. Suggestion. Reject. Gaia once again pressed her palm on Yenlu's chest. Scanning again. Subscriber's body contains the gene chain of number 28. Retention rate is 0. 47%. Subscriber's body contains the mutated gene chain of number 28. Retention rate is 7. 9%. Suggestion. Retaining the mutated gene chain is more beneficial to the subscriber's soul strength. Executed. Chapter 1054. The huge impact made Jiangzhou fall to the ground in an ungraceful posture. His body scraped up a layer of soil. Fortunately, with the protection of 100 Tribulations Taoist's bronze mirror, Jiangzhou didn't suffer any external injuries. Jiangzhou quickly got up and looked around nervously. Although he didn't know what happened after he fainted, from the scene just now, Jiangzhou could guess some clues. The president sent him away in such a hurry, which meant that the purple-haired little girl was quite terrifying. Jiangzhou wanted to go back and see how 100 Tribulations Taoist was doing, but he knew that if he went back, he would only be a burden. The only thing he could do was to protect himself. At least, he didn't want 100 Tribulations Taoist to send him away in vain. But what Jiangzhou didn't expect was that after he walked carefully for a while, he unexpectedly met the monster of Vermilion Bird Tribe who wanted to cut his master's body into thousands of pieces, Yenlu. This unexpected encounter made Jiangzhou tremble with fear. What made Jiang Zhuo more frightened was that he saw the crazy monster of vermilion bird tribe eating the corpses of its own kind, other monsters' corpses, and even cultivators' corpses. Yen Lu's whole body was emitting a horrifying and violent aura, like a time bomb. Jiang Zhuo carefully hid himself, afraid that he would be discovered by this crazy monster, but at this moment, he saw the purple-haired little girl. This little girl shouldn't be with 100 Tribulations Taoist. Could it be that something bad had happened to 100 Tribulations Taoist? Jiang Zhuo felt extremely frightened. He carefully curled up, afraid that he would make any noise and attract the little girl's attention. At this moment, the little girl seemed to say something to Yen Lu, and then Yen Lu suddenly fainted on the ground in pain. Not long after, the little girl directly lifted Yen Lu, and then flew away from this area. The little girl took Yen Lu away. But when he left, Jiang Zhuo clearly saw the purple-haired little girl glancing at the place where he was hiding. But she didn't stop and didn't do anything to him. It was as if she didn't care about him. And the little girl disappeared in the sky above the forest. Jiang Zhuo subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. But at this moment, question: has the subscriber chosen the desired item? Bing Bing's cold voice came from behind Jiang Zhuo. He twisted his stiff neck, feeling as though his heart was being challenged by a great challenge. Didn't she already leave with the vermilion bird's flames? How could she? Jiang Zhuo was so frightened that he couldn't say a word. As a cultivator, he had power that ordinary people didn't have. He should be able to look at everything in the world with a smile. But now, facing something that he couldn't understand, he realized that he was just a tiny grain of sand in the Ganges River. But the other party didn't seem to have any ill intentions. At the very least, he didn't seem to have any ill intentions for now. Item? What item? Jiang Zhuo carefully followed the other person's words and asked a question. At the same time, he kept looking around at the surrounding terrain. Question: is the buyer not satisfied with the items in Division 7? The 7th district is this forest? The 7th district. Could it be that there were many different districts, and in these districts there were also many treasures like this ancient forest? The vastness of this forest had already exceeded his imagination, and the amount of heavenly and earthly treasures hidden here was uncountable. However, if this was merely the 7th division, how big was this place? How many districts are there? Jiang Zhuo followed Gaia's words and asked a question. This was all he could do now. He knew that he had to obtain more information before the other party was exposed. There are a total of 12 districts. Gaia blinked. Please state the type of item you are interested in, so that it will be easier to search and guide. Jiang Zhuo was stunned. Why did this little girl feel like she was some kind of intelligence? Jiang Zhuo didn't enter Taoism for a long time, only less than 20 years. Because of his qualifications, he was chosen by his wandering master. Before entering Taoism, he was a graduate student specializing in Python in the computer science department of a key university. At that time, the development of artificial intelligence was still in its infancy. But after he started cultivating, his scientific values were completely overturned. Outside of science, there was this supernatural power. However, unlike ordinary Taoist cultivators who worshipped these supernatural powers, Jiang Zhuo had been trying to use scientific concepts to explain these supernatural powers. Unfortunately, his knowledge was shallow. Most of the things he knew were the facts, but he didn't know the whys and wherefores. Even as his cultivation increased, he became more aware of his own shortcomings. But if this little girl was really some kind of intelligence, powerful strength and intelligence, what kind of technological crystallization was she? If humans could master this technology. In a split second, a few crazy thoughts appeared in Jiang Zhuo's mind. While these thoughts made Jiang Zhuo feel ridiculous, they also gave him an impulse that he couldn't extricate himself from. Cultivating and becoming an immortal. To put it bluntly, it was to achieve immortality or even immortality. But cultivation was a path of no return. Kelowna hadn't had a cultivator who had attained immortality for a long time. Currently, there were only a few people who had reached the Tao querying realm in the Tao world. But if it was this kind of technology, if consciousness could be replicated and carried into a body similar to this little girl's, would it be another form of immortality? Please state the type of item you are interested in so that it will be easier to search and guide. At this moment, Gaia once again calmly repeated this question. This made Jiang's was stunned. Although she was an intelligence, he felt that this little girl's intelligence was relatively low. If it was only at this level, it seemed that current human technology could do it. The only difference was that humans couldn't create such a body with such terrifying power. Jiang's couldn't help but feel disappointed. Jiang's opened his mouth, but suddenly, he realized that the surroundings had become quiet. Jiang's immediately blamed himself for being careless. President Bai Jie's fate was still unknown, but he had been distracted. What did you do to President Bai Jie? Jiang's asked shakily. The criminal escaped again after destroying 7 clones, Gaia said slowly. The criminal's danger level has been raised. Currently, 10 clones have been sent to hunt him down. The clones have been raised again, unlocking the upper limit of power. Rest assured. Rest assured my ass, but in that case, President was still safe for now. He was indeed the evergreen tree of the Tao world. His foundation was probably unimaginable. It was just unknown whether he could deal with the so-called unlocking the upper limit of power that this little girl had mentioned. He definitely could. After all, President Bai Jie was a legend in the Tao world. At this moment, knowing that President Bai Jie was temporarily safe, Jiang's quietly sighed in relief. His mind turned rapidly, and suddenly, a bold idea appeared in his mind. Could he understand this little girl and this place better and find a way to leave? Ask directly how to leave? But Jiang's quickly dispelled this idea. Things weren't that simple. If he directly asked to leave, wouldn't it violate some judgment mechanism of this little girl's AI program? You said to buy. Jiang's asked carefully, but you have to let me know what I can buy, right? The basis of business is exchange, at least the same value. I mean, what do I use to buy? It can't be money, right? Gaia didn't speak, her eyes flickering. Jiang's waited for a while and scratched his head. How about this? You have to tell me what I can buy. Scanning, Gaia suddenly spat out such a sentence. After that, Jiang's felt as though he was being stripped naked and studied from top to bottom, inside and out. Confirmation complete, matching complete. Just as Gaia's voice fell, many 10-centimeter wide light screens suddenly appeared in front of Jiang's, like virtual screens projected out. These screens appeared one by one on the left, right, front, back, and above Jiang's head. There was a dazzling array of them. In front of him, there was a yellow screen while the others were blue. Gaia didn't speak. Jiang's looked at the things that appeared on these screens in confusion. Strangely, he could clearly read the words on them. These were modern words. What was written on the yellow screen seemed to be his purchasing power. Purchasing power in soul conversion points, 107 plus 20. Health conversion points purchasing power, 1-3 memory conversion point purchasing power, 3-19 purchasing power of life conversion points, 120 luck achievement emotion. The same, the numbers were clear in the end. Jiang's saw that his total purchasing power was 107 points. He did some calculations and found that his soul was 107 points. After adding all the other attributes together, it was just 107 points. In other words, health, memory, luck, achievements, and so on, only when all of them were combined would it be considered a complete soul. But after the soul conversion into purchasing power, there was an unknown upper limit. What the hell was this? With his current purchasing power, if the soul was the maximum value, it would only be the lowest standard for purchasing. What was the basis for this set of calculation? Jiang Zhuo stole a glance at Gaia, but she still didn't move. He controlled his impatience and started to study the numerous blue screens. On them were the things that he said he could buy. Without a doubt, the things on the screen weren't worth more than 107 points. Why is there no upper limit for purchasing power after the soul? Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but ask. The quality of the soul has room for improvement. The current purchasing power is the conversion value of the current soul quality. Jiang Zhuo paused, subconsciously saying, "What if I use all of my 107 points to buy something now? You will take my soul?" 107 points is the total value. You can choose to deduct 20 life points and collect the soul after the subscriber dies. There was such a method? Only after the subscriber dies. Could it be taken away until the subscriber dies? There didn't seem to be any loss. Jiang Zhuo paused. If I don't want to die now, the total purchasing power is only 87 points, right? Confirm. Jiang Zhuo didn't understand. He asked curiously. Then if I buy something now, it is exactly 87 points. And you said that my soul's quality still has room for improvement. What I mean is, when my life comes to an end and my soul's quality exceeds the purchasing power of 87 points, how will the extra part be calculated? After death, the soul will be collected according to the transaction agreement. This purchase wasn't fair. Instantly, Jiang Zhuo realized the trick. When a person's purchasing power was only enough to buy low-level items at the current stage, he could only buy low-level items, but when his purchasing power increased, he would still have to pay according to the initial transaction. If he chose to use the soul as the transaction object at the beginning, it was like an investment for the other party. In the end, the other party would gain more profit. But vaguely, there seemed to be some loopholes in this detail. But the information in front of him was too explosive. Jiang Zhuo couldn't grasp it immediately. He couldn't help but rub his eyebrows. Let me see. Jiang Zhuo stretched out his hand. A blue screen automatically flew in front of him. 70 stalks of polar star grass. The first 3 chapters of 9 transformation golden body scriptures. Female transformation? Pass. Level 3 gene restoration reagent. Looks good? 1 minute tour of Eternal Kingdom. 1 minute? What the hell is Eternal Kingdom? Scam. Pass. Jiang Zhuo browsed through the screens one by one. He couldn't understand some of the contents, while he was tempted by some of them. However, he was wondering if there would be better ones in the future. With this kind of consumer mentality, Jiang Zhuo browsed through the screens one by one. But at the same time, Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but be sure of one thing. He knew that in the future, the quality of his soul would improve, and his purchasing power would increase. It wasn't wise to buy now, but there were some things in front of him that were fatally tempting. That feeling was like, this kind of thing might be easy for you to get in the future, but you can't get it now. If you want it, come and buy it, we won't force you. You can decide if you want it or not. It really grasped one's weakness thoroughly. Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but laugh bitterly in his heart. Jiang Zhuo couldn't remember how many blue screens he had swiped through, but at this time, the content of the item caught his attention. This works too? Jiang Zhuo swallowed his saliva, pointed at the item on the blue screen, and asked Gaia with a trembling heart. Confirm. Then Jiang Zhuo swallowed his saliva. His heart was beating wildly, and his fingers were trembling as he slowly tapped on the purchase option on the screen. Purchase item. Trial Treasure Vault Manager Gaia's Body Assembly Line Inspection Time, 14,800 seconds, Assembly Line. Chapter 1055. The ground shook slightly, and a crack of about 10 meters long and 3 meters wide appeared on the ground. After that, a huge metal frame rose from the crack. Finally, the metal frame was completely visible. Jiang Zhuo estimated that the frame was about 20 meters tall. But the frame wasn't empty. It was more like an entrance. Strange energy kept emerging from the 4 corners of the frame, and the space within the frame was distorted. "Go in?" Jiang Zhuo asked instinctively. Gaia nodded. After receiving Gaia's reply, Jiang Zhuo gulped. The transaction had started, and the production line of Gaia's body was about to appear in front of him. But the countdown hadn't started yet. Jiang Zhuo reached his hand into the frame and found that his palm didn't go through. Instead, a part of it disappeared. It was indeed a distorted passage. Jiang Zhuo was amazed by the technology, and he was even more curious about Gaia's manufacturing process. The viewing time could reach up to 4,800 seconds, which was 80 minutes, more than an hour. But this would be all his purchasing power. Obviously, it wasn't worth it to use it all up. Jiang Zhuo only bought this item, and after the viewing time officially started, he had the right to stop at any time. Jiang Zhuo didn't know if he was right or wrong, but there was no doubt that he would come into contact with some of the secrets of this place. The treasury manager, Gaia's body production line. No matter how he looked at it, it was probably the core of this place. Jiang Zhuo walked into the frame resolutely. When his body completely passed through the frame, what appeared in front of Jiang Zhuo wasn't a long tunnel or a huge sci-fi base, as he had imagined. In front of him was a pure white space. Because of the pure white, he couldn't see the boundary, and he didn't know how big this space was. Gaia followed Jiang Zhuo in. "What is this place?" Jiang Zhuo frowned as his expectations were dashed. "Transit station." After giving the answer, Gaia walked past Jiang Zhuo and stopped in front of him. She reached out her hand, and at this moment, the pure white ground beneath Gaia's feet cracked open and a white pillar slowly extended from the ground. It seemed to be a device to control it. Gaia's palm was placed on top of the pillar, and not long after, a ray of light shot out from the pillar. The space in front of him slowly split open, revealing another strange door. Jiang Zhuo smiled bitterly. It seemed that his wish to observe the place before visiting the assembly line was in vain. He thought that he would have a chance to see more things on the way. That's impossible. The other party clearly didn't leave behind such a loophole. The place behind this light door was probably the workshop where the assembly line was located. Gaia took the lead and walked towards the door of light. Jiang Zhuo followed Gaia and placed his hand on the white pillar, but there was no reaction. However, Gaia suddenly turned around. "This thing feels good, ha 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 ha." Jiang Zhuo laughed awkwardly. "Is this the workshop where the assembly line is located?" Gaia didn't reply, merely looking at Jiang Zhuo silently. Jiang Zhuo could only break out in a cold sweat. Under the gaze of Gaia's purple eyes, he walked stiffly towards the door of light and passed through it. Gaia's workshop. It was a huge pool. The space in front of him wasn't pure white, but there weren't any complicated instruments that he didn't know the name of. Everything was so simple, just like a minimalist's room that carefully discarded all unnecessary items. Below the ring-shaped space, there was only a pool filled with a strange colorful liquid. There seemed to be many white pillars at the edge of the pool, just like the one that Jiang Zhuo had touched before. Jiang Zhuo took a step forward subconsciously, and a light shadow suddenly appeared under his feet. This light shadow was like a suspended board, slowly sending Jiang Zhuo to the bottom, to the edge of the pool. Although he couldn't feel any technical component from the first impression of this place, but he was afraid that every bit of this place was the crystallization of some kind of technical level beyond human knowledge. For example, the dustless level here. Since the moment he entered, Jiang Zhuo felt that his body had become extremely clean, as if his body had been polished by water for decades, but he didn't even know when he had been dusted. Jiang Zhuo didn't even breathe any oxygen at this moment. The super senses of a cultivator allowed him to feel that the oxygen present here was seeping into his body bit by bit, directly bypassing the respiratory system and completing the exchange of oxygen in his body. Breathing was still present, but the method of oxygen supply had quietly changed. At this moment, a palm-sized circular light screen suddenly appeared beside him. On the light screen, there were Arabic numerals that he could understand, and it started to jump from 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. His viewing time had started from now. There was no secret manipulation to speed up time, nor was there any slowing down. The time was jumping by the second fairly. But everything in this workshop made Jiang Zuo feel that he didn't know where to start. Time was still jumping. Jiang Zuo, his brain started to work, to think how to solve this situation. Just viewing, calm down. Viewing, the content and definition of viewing. Got it. At this moment, Jiang Zuo suddenly looked at Gaia, racing against time. He didn't have time to think too much. Since it's just a viewing, there should be a demonstration, right? I want to see the working situation of this workshop. And you have to explain each step to me. After saying this, Jiang Zuo stared at Gaia nervously, afraid that she would reject him. Time was still jumping, and every second was extremely precious. Understood. Finally, from Gaia's mouth, the words that made Jiang Zuo extremely excited. Gaia actually agreed to his request. After that, Gaia didn't do anything else to delay time. She walked straight to a pillar, her palm pressing on it again. Above this huge rainbow pool, there were clearly many blue light screens again. But this time, the words that appeared on the light screen were words that Jiang Zuo didn't recognize. He only saw a body structure diagram, which was probably Gaia's body structure. Unfortunately, the annotations on the diagram were still words that Jiang Zuo couldn't understand, or rather, symbols. Can't you translate it into a language that I can understand? For example, like the list of items you gave me? Jiang Zuo asked subconsciously. Rejected. Subscriber's current purchasing power is not enough to purchase this service. I'm poor, I'm sorry. Jiang Zuo clenched his teeth, immediately using his vision to look at the light screen. Cultivators had excellent memory. At this moment, Jiang Zuo thought that even if he couldn't understand it now, he could remember it, and perhaps there would be a possibility of understanding it in the future. For any language, as long as he could find a breakthrough point, he could still translate it bit by bit. Body design diagram entered. General parameters entered. Myriad pool production mode activated. Activation successful. Production time is 7,943 seconds. This time had exceeded the time that Jiang Zuo could view, which meant that he couldn't see the moment the body was completed, and naturally, he wouldn't be able to see the adjustments of the body. But the contents of the light screen had been absorbed into Jiang Zuo's memory. He didn't need to understand, he just needed to treat it like a camera, treating it as pure graphics, and store it all. Not all cultivators could increase their intelligence, but they could definitely increase the ability of their brain. It could be said that every cultivator with some achievements had the strongest brain. As he absorbed the information, Jiang Zuo stared at the pool. Gaia seemed to call this pool the Myriad Pool. Under Jiang Zuo's gaze, the colorful liquid in the Myriad Essence Pool slowly stirred. After a short while, the stirred liquid began to change. First, it condensed, becoming slender, then fixed, finally becoming like a mechanical arm, and finally solidified. That's right, from liquid to solid. There were a total of 4 mechanical arms. But they didn't have a base, they were completely extended from the Myriad Pool, and were one with the pool. But the appearance of the slender mechanical arm didn't surprise Jiang Zuo. This is a printed arm? Jiang Zuo asked in surprise. Confirm. Perhaps because of the feeling of viewing the explanation, Gaia continued. The body's exterior is made in 3D printing mode. It's really printed. Jiang Zuo paused. At this time, on the printing needles of the 10 mechanical arms, a steady stream of colored threads appeared, directly turning on the printing mode. Although there were only a few colored threads at first, after a while they should be able to see the main frame of the body, just that. What's the material? Jiang Zuo frowned. It's also the water in the pool. Myriad Pool? Confirm. Gaia nodded. Myriad Pool has the ability to decompose and reassemble particles, can be used as any material. The entire process is known as the universal element. decomposing and reassembling particles, can be used as any material. When Jiang Zhuo heard this, he instantly understood the preciousness of this item. He couldn't help but ask in a trembling voice. Then can organic and inorganic materials work? Confirm. What about the stability after reassembling? Jiang Zhuo hurriedly asked. Is there a time limit or no time limit? For example, if the myriad pool is reassembled into food, will it really become food? Confirm. How is that possible? Jiang Zhuo exclaimed. This completely violates the conservation of energy. For example, entropy can't be reversed. Can it be that after turning into ice it can still turn into fire? Fire is a burning state, it's completely different from ice. Yes. Gaia's words were still simple and direct. However, Jiang Zhuo's worldview had been completely overturned by the myriad pool's function. If humans could obtain such an incredible material, how far could their science and technology progress? Suddenly, Jiang Zhuo's heart skipped a beat. He turned pale with fright. Could it be that everything in this treasury, including all the treasures, are made of these myriad pool? This was the only explanation that could explain why there were so many treasures in the forest. Those living habits and forming conditions were all different, yet they could completely defy the laws of nature and grow in the same place. However, Gaia didn't answer Jiang Zhuo's question. Since that was the case, Jiang Zhuo was almost certain of his guess. He stared blankly at the operation of the mechanical arms. At this moment, the mechanical arms of the myriad pool had already printed out a few skeleton-like things. The soft sound of printing was very pleasant to the ears. The colorful threads of the myriad pool were intoxicating. Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but subconsciously think that this place had so many incredible things. Was it all because of the myriad pool? Was it because someone had mastered this inconceivable material that allowed the technology to develop to such a level that was so different from today's humans? Myriad element. Was it naturally formed, or was it artificially created? Time continued to pass. Jiang Zhuo glanced at the light screen beside him that calculated the time. More than 600 seconds had passed, but more than half of the time he was stunned and shocked. Jiang Zhuo suddenly shivered and made a request. These pillars are control panels, right? Can I touch them? Isn't there an experience to this kind of visit? Confirm. Gaia nodded and moved aside, indicating that Jiang Zhuo could come to the pillar in front of her. How generous! Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but mutter. Subscriber's knowledge level doesn't have any possibility of theft. Experiment allowed. It seems like I've been completely underestimated. But I don't believe it. Jiang Zhuo took a deep breath and rolled up his sleeves. He walked to the pillar and placed his palm on top of it. Suddenly, his brain seemed to be flooded with countless things, and these things directly appeared in his vision. It was a complex interface made up of hundreds of light screens. It seemed like he could control the functions of the interface with his thoughts. But Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but laugh bitterly, his face bitter. But I'm really sorry for being a bad student. I can't understand. It isn't that hard to understand, hee. Jiang Zhuo smiled as he turned to look at the expressionless Gaia. Then, he continued to focus on the hundreds of screens. Since you said it's an experience, then I don't care. I'll just randomly click. But no matter what Jiang Zhuo randomly clicked, the blue interface didn't react at all. There wasn't a second option. There wasn't even a confirmation or denial notification. Facing the indifferent screens, Jiang Zhuo seemed to see countless bright red crosses in front of his eyes, insufficient authority, and so on. The only ones that could be successfully operated were a few. After Jiang Zhuo clicked, 4 printing arms appeared in the pool and started to print the second body. Jiang Zhuo couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This Gaia really didn't leave any loopholes for him to exploit. Jiang Zhuo shook his head in disappointment. He was thinking, should he stop the tour now? At least he would have some purchasing power left and wouldn't have to spend it all here. Anyway, the information was already in his brain. Even though he didn't have the ability to decipher it, but if he gathered the best linguists in the world, maybe he could find some clues? With that thought, Jiang's suddenly had the thought of giving up. But at this moment, his thoughts swayed and accidentally touched a blue screen. It seemed to be opened. At this moment, a new screen suddenly popped up in front of Jiang's. On this screen, a new set of images appeared. Or rather, it was an influence. He saw a man in an ancient costume. Dressed in white, holding a 3-foot-long sword. This man had a bitter expression on his face, and there was a hint of anger between his brows. Even though he was just watching through the film, this man's gaze was enough to make Jiang's heart tremble. It was as if this man was looking at him through time and space. Countless seniors of my generation have been looking for Penglai dauntlessly, but I didn't expect it to be such a dead land. How ridiculous! Since this isn't the immortal path to heaven, what's the use of it? Since there is no immortal path in this world, then I'll cut one with my own hands. The man came forward with a sword in his hand. Tens of thousands of sword lights shot into the sky from his body. Behind this man, Jiang's saw countless destroyed Gaias. The screen suddenly shook and the 3-foot-long sword in the man's hand flashed in front of Jiang's eyes. Chapter 1056. In the past, Jiang had thought that the strongest person in the world should be the heavyweight boxing champion who appeared on live TV or the special bodyguards who protected the most important people in the country. Later, when Jiang met his master, he realized that there were people in the world who were far stronger than the so-called heavyweight boxing champion, Taoist cultivators. The appearance of his master had completely destroyed the education that Jiang had received in the past 20 years. Therefore, he had joined the army of Taoist cultivators without hesitation. Why was it an army of Taoist cultivators? Because his master had half-jokingly said that Taoist cultivation led to a dead end. Jiang, who had completely envisioned the various inconceivable abilities of Taoist cultivators, didn't sorrowfully discuss the problem of this dead end with his master. Instead, he ignited all his passion, wanting to empty out his master's bottom line. Flying in the sky, burrowing into the earth, and toppling mountains and overturning seas, this was a huge power that was described in epics and novels. However, Jiang had never seen it. According to his master, he was probably in the middle of the Tao world, which was the so-called neither top nor bottom. What was the peak? Jiang didn't know. But perhaps the man in front of him with the 3-foot-long sword in his hand was the so-called pinnacle. Every sword light was as powerful as a tactical missile. Every time he moved, he could cause a loud sound in the air. When he slapped out his palm, the ground sank a little. His roar brought a violent wind, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife, making people feel as if their souls were about to be cut open. There was actually such a powerful Taoist in the world. Figures fell from the sky, and the ground was full of Gaia's corpses. Jiang didn't know the cause of this battle, but when he looked at the white-robed Taoist with a long sword, he couldn't help but feel his blood boiling. It was always a magnificent army, but he alone could do it. What kind of spirit was this? What kind of high cultivation was this? His master had said that Kelowna used to be the most brilliant Kelowna in the Tao world. Taoist cultivators swallowed clouds and exhaled fog, held the galaxy with their hands, and went to the ends of the world. This white-robed Taoist with a long sword was from that era. Don't lose. Don't lose. The white-robed Taoist in the image seemed to have turned into a huge statue in front of Jiang. At this moment, Jiang didn't want this statue to collapse. He didn't like that the sword in the white-robed Taoist's hand would break, and he didn't like that his magic power would be exhausted. He didn't want him to lose in this place. What Jiang didn't know was that his palms were sweating, and his clothes were soaked unknowingly. At this moment, the image in front of him suddenly changed. The ground suddenly split open, and a huge metal frame suddenly emerged. It was the door that he had encountered when he entered this place. Numerous figures rushed out from the door, heading straight for the horizon. Each of them was a cold and detached Gaia. Dozens? Hundreds? Thousands? Hundreds? Thousands? When these Gaias filled the sky, no matter how unwilling Jiang Zuo was to see the white-robed Taoist lose, he still felt an unbearable despair in his heart. Gaia lined up in the sky, inside and outside, forming 3 huge, layered circles. Their movements were so unified. Finally, a huge whirlpool appeared in the sky. A huge beam of light, suddenly shot towards the ground from the whirlpool. Jiang Zuo heard a maniacal laugh. On the ground, a huge green lotus flower suddenly bloomed. At the center of the green lotus flower, a figure swung his sword towards the sky, towards the huge pillar of light. The extreme light covered the entire image. Jiang Zuo, who felt like he was there, painfully closed his eyes. After a long time, Jiang Zuo opened his eyes with difficulty. Everything disappeared, the ground became as smooth as a mirror, and a huge pit was left behind by this battle. At this moment, a large number of Gaia fell from the sky, completely losing their ability to move, but Jiang Zuo couldn't see the white-robed Taoist anymore. After that, Gaia seemed to be lifted up by someone and brought into the huge metal frame, and finally, Gaia were thrown into a colorful pool, the pool of myriad elements. When all the Gaia were thrown into the pool of myriad elements, the image gradually dimmed as if it was slowly closing its eyes. Before all the images disappeared, Jiang Zuo heard intermittent voices. Gaia's voice. Detecting body damage. 16. 7%. A Level 5 AI program severely damaged. AI program degraded. Level 4 AI program severely damaged. Program degraded. Requesting program repair from host. Requesting program repair from host again. No response. Program degraded. Level 3 AI program severely damaged. Requesting program repair from host again. A Level 2 AI program severely damaged. No response. Program degraded. Primary AI program slightly damaged. Usable, activating body repair program. Prototype Universal Treasure House Manager Gaia preparing to hibernate. Countdown. 3, 2, 1. Darkness. The one who brought them back, is it you? Jiang Zuo's palm suddenly separated from the pillar. His consciousness was pushed out of the complex interface space. His gaze fell on Gaia, who was standing beside him. That battle, you're the only one left? Jiang Zuo swallowed his saliva and asked. Gaia's purple pupils flickered for a moment before it finally nodded slowly. That person, is he dead? Jiang Zuo asked again, his voice trembling. Target's life trace is not within the search range, determined to be dead or have left. You didn't pursue? Out of range, unable to pursue, uncertain of life and death. Jiang Zuo calmed himself down at this moment. He hoped that the white-robed Taoist could safely retreat. After all, he had too many enemies. The Gaia printed with myriad elements was like a mass-produced weapon, endless. But there was a time when a person's strength was limited. Jiang Zuo didn't think that the white-robed Taoist had lost the dignity of a cultivator. But it seemed that this pool could not only reassemble myriad elements, it could also decompose them back to their original form. Otherwise, with so many Gaias thrown in, the pool wouldn't overflow. It was truly a miraculous material. Why did he fight with you? Jiang Zuo asked the question he wanted to know. Memory database missing, unable to answer. No wonder the image was only half of the middle part, the front part was missing, it was rather abrupt. Jiang Zuo's heart skipped a beat. The last part of the image seemed to be some sort of meet and see report from Gaia. But this Gaia in front of him was in perfect condition, it should have been completely repaired. But, you're still just a basic AI program? Jiang Zuo asked nervously. Confirm. That's right. Jiang Zuo suddenly clapped his hands. Myriad element pool, Gaia, a terrifying technology that transcended countless gaps in human history, all of this, how could it be just a dull artificial intelligence? This was a very awkward thing. If this Gaia in front of him was just a basic AI, the higher AI couldn't be activated because it couldn't be repaired. This was worthy of everything in this mysterious place. But Jiang's excitement quickly turned into fear. For such a powerful Gaia, if it was just a dull AI, it would be fine. But if it was a high AI, or even to the extent of being able to think and evolve independently, Jiang's couldn't imagine what would happen next. He didn't even dare to imagine. The time recording screen beside him had already been set to 3000. Damn it! He actually wasted so much time. Jiang's was shocked. This 4,800 seconds of viewing time was all of his purchasing power, which included the maximum 20 HP. After this, his life would be in danger. At this moment, Jiang's couldn't care less about his initial goal. He hurriedly said, Stop viewing time. 3000. But the moment the number jumped to 3000, it stopped moving. At least his life was saved. Jiang's subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. He looked at the two Gaias in the myriad element pool with some reluctance. He probably wouldn't have the chance to see this kind of technology in the future, right? Then how should I leave? Jiang's subconsciously looked at Gaia, just as he was about to ask if he should leave. His voice suddenly stopped. Gaia had stopped. Gaia, who had an exquisite and almost perfect face, lowered her head slightly and stood motionless in her original spot. She actually stopped. What is this? Jiang's subconsciously walked in front of Gaia, waving his hand in front of her eyes. Gaia slowly raised her head. Question: Does the subscriber want to purchase an item? Item, just now Jiang's voice suddenly stopped. This Gaia seemed to have some problems. Question: Does the subscriber want to purchase an item? I haven't thought about it, can I consider it? Jiang's asked tentatively. Confirm, please wake up Gaia after the purchase to complete the transaction. Gaia's purple pupils flashed, and then it slowly lowered its head as if all its functions had stopped. What kind of operation is this? Jiang's stared at Gaia in disbelief. He then looked around. Then he looked at the time screen beside him. The numbers actually didn't start moving. Elementary artificial intelligence program, moderately damaged, usable. Even now, this program is still in the process of being damaged? Oh my god, doesn't this mean? Jiang's slowly, once again, approached the edge of the myriad essence pool, his hands trembling, reaching towards the white pillar. There was no time limit. Captain, this seems to be the end of the forest. A member of the administration hurriedly turned back and reported to the four captains. Ling Feng nodded, but there was no joy on his face. Instead, it became more and more serious, because after being transferred to this place, they didn't encounter any living things. Not to mention people, they couldn't even see things like insects. After all, the place they were in was a small forest. This was too illogical. Not only that, in this forest, the people of the administration found many treasures. Whether it was the members who were sent to the monster race or the Taoist sect, or the members sent from the major monster race or the Taoist sect, they all learned about treasures. They could identify some very rare materials, but as for more, they couldn't identify them at all. But this didn't prevent the people of the administration from determining the value of this forest. Originally, they planned to mine it, because the treasures were too attractive. But this action was stopped by Ling Feng before they started. It wasn't that Ling Feng wasn't interested in the treasures in the forest, but this place was too strange. No one touched these things here. Let's go back and collect them when we have the chance. In addition, this place is very strange. It's inconvenient for us to move around with these things. Most importantly, we have to figure out the origin of this place. If possible, if we can let the country take over this place, we can start developing it. Obviously, picking up some benefits here was not as attractive as occupying this huge treasure trove of resources and then developing it. Besides, they did not know what dangers lay ahead. If they brought these things and fell in front of them, wouldn't they become cute couriers who delivered their heads to others from thousands of miles away? They weren't that stupid. Fortunately, the administration was quite strict, and most of them followed the rules very well. Some who planned to secretly hide some things were forced to give up under the pressure. "Captain, there's a figure in front, moving at high speed." At this moment, a team member hurriedly reported back. Ling Feng looked at the other 3 captains beside him and nodded. Everyone took out their binoculars and looked up. Outside the forest was a small grassland, and at this time, in that grassland, 2 figures were indeed running at high speed. This is the leader of the Green Dragon clan, Song Jinshui, and the leader of the Vermilion Bird clan, Chu Xinghe. Through the binoculars, they clearly saw the 2 high-ranking members of the Monster Association. At this time, their appearance could be described as miserable. There was even a visible wound on Song Jinshui's arm. As for Chu Xinghe, the original fiery red fur coat had long disappeared, leaving only a tattered black tight suit, showing off her wonderful figure. Look, the 2 of them seemed to be chased by something. Looking back through the binoculars, they saw 2 figures flying at high speed on the grassland. They had delicate facial features, but they were wearing scarlet metal claws. "Captain, what should we do?" a team member hurriedly asked. Ling Feng glanced at him. If he remembered correctly, this team member should be a monster sent from the Green Dragon clan for military service. Even if he told them not to move, this team member probably wouldn't listen to him, right? All of them. Ling Feng suddenly stood up and shouted, "All team members, support them immediately! Hey!" At this time, the only female captain among the 4 captains stepped on the slope. She held an M16A in her hand and placed it on her long legs. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the scope. "Wait, don't use Meteor God. F***CK. Red Silk. F***CKU. With a bang, a certain type of bullet, numbering in the tens of millions, burst out of the chamber. Yin 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 yin. Chapter 1057. The bullet flew out from the barrel of the M16A that was not silenced. The sound of the gunshot instantly caught Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe's attention. These 2 high-level members of the Monster Association subconsciously looked back. One of the 2 Gaia Atom behind them waved a giant metal claw at this time. But this scarlet giant claw was destroyed in an instant. Yes, it was destroyed in an instant. The broken half of the claw had turned into ashes. At this moment, the Gaia who was hit suddenly stopped. At this time, another gunshot sounded. The Gaia who had broken an arm waved the remaining scarlet giant claw again, but her claw was destroyed again. The Gaia who had broken 2 arms had her eyes flickering at this time. The moment the 3rd gunshot sounded, the Gaia who had broken both arms suddenly opened her mouth. A huge beam of light shot out from her mouth, directly into the distant woods. At the moment the beam shot out, the Gaia's head suddenly leaned back. Then, her head was like the 2 arms that had been destroyed. Boom! The huge beam of light also shot into the woods in front at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the entire woods were completely cut off by the beam. The place where the beam passed had turned into a state of magma. A lot of heat was emitted, and the air was distorted because of the heat. Only the scorched earth was left in front of them. Although this level of attack made Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe shocked at the same time, after all, they had fought all the way here. They had seen the power of Gaia, so they were shocked but not horrified. But the people from the agency were different. When had they ever seen such a terrifying attack? This was not a large-scale hot weapon, but the power released from a young individual. At this moment, more than a dozen members of the agency did not remember to dodge the beam at the moment and directly lost their lives here. Captain Ling Feng and the others did not have time to feel sad, because this terrifying little girl was still alive. Captain Ling Feng glanced at Hong Ling at this time. Although Hong Ling successfully killed an enemy with 3 bullets, This was under the premise that the enemy did not know the characteristics of the bullets. No matter how powerful the bullets were, if they could not hit the target, it was useless. But the enemy's terrifying attack power and attack range could wipe out the entire agency in minutes. Everyone. Ling Feng took a deep breath at this time. Everyone, spread out. Team 1, Team 2, follow me. Team 3, prepare to provide long-range support. Team 4, use suppressive fire. With that said, Ling Feng quickly held an assault rifle in his hand and led the charge into the grassland below the woods. In the distance, dozens of figures rushed out of the woods. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe looked at each other, and they saw a look of surprise in each other's eyes. They were the agencies. In this case, to be able to meet a nominal ally and get support was naturally something to be happy about, and they did not know what method the agency used to directly kill one of the monster little girls. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe were lucky enough to escape from the disaster not long ago, but since then, they had been chased by two monster little girls. These two little girls cooperated very well, and Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe obviously did not have such good team coordination, and if they continued to fight, it would only attract more of their kind. It was already very difficult to deal with one of them, let alone a group of them. But this time it was different, with the agency's reinforcement, and there was only one of them left. Song Jinshui's fists collided fiercely in front of him at this time, and a green demon power began to erupt from his body. Chu Xinghe, can we join hands now? Haven't we always been working together? Chu Xinghe narrowed his eyes at this time, and his voice was very frivolous. Even so, this vermilion bird tribe priest with a proud figure had already ignited a bright red flame in his palm. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe flew out at the same time. In midair, a fierce wind suddenly blew and flames soared to the sky. A gigantic azure dragon and a giant fiery red bird had appeared. They are using their real bodies to fight. Captain Ling Feng frowned at this time. These two guys were quite embarrassed when they were chased, but now they were very powerful. Team 1 and Team 2 changed to long-range attacks from both sides. Use of Taoist bullets is allowed. Because before they were transferred here, the agency's people were in a hurry, and they did not have time to bring a lot of equipment, but one of the agency's standard Taoist bullets, everyone would more or less carry some. The so-called Taoist bullets were given the power of one-time Taoist magic by a special method. The agency had several cooperative Taoist sects that specialized in supplying this kind of bullet. At this moment, Song Jinshui and the fiery bird were fiercely attacking Gaia. Behind them, dozens of agency's members took out their specially modified guns to load Taoist bullets and launched a fierce attack at the same time. Da-da-da-da! Next to Ling Feng, the M16A made a crazy burst sound, which made him sigh. Hong Ling's violence had long been a symbol in the agency. At this time, the only thing that Ling Feng could be thankful for was that Hong Ling still had some rationality. At least this time, he was not burning god-killing bullets, but the relatively cheap Taoist bullet. Just watching Hong Ling change the magazines one by one, Captain Ling Feng couldn't help but feel a little heartache. Damn it, how should I write the report when I go back? Forget it, we need to save Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, these two big bosses of the monster clan. It would be strange if Hong Ling is not angry. Glasses. Ling Feng seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he sighed. But what the hell is this? Glasses frowned at this time, looking straight at the depths of the grassland. At this time, the little girl was under the strong attack of Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, as well as the siege of the agency's people at the same time. There was a touch of horror on his face. It's just like a combat weapon. Under the coordinated attack of so many people, the only remaining Gaia did not show any signs of falling into a disadvantageous position. At this moment, a loud dragon roar came from the front. Along with the dragon roar came the cry of a huge firebird. The azure dragon spat out a huge green ball from its mouth, while the firebird flapped its wings, and 2 huge pillars of fire suddenly shot out from its mouth. The green sphere and the fire pillars intertwined at this time, turning into an even bigger green and red fire pillar, fiercely rolling down on Gaia. Boom! On the grassland, a heat wave instantly spread out, and the violent airflow almost overturned people's bodies. After a long time, nearly half of the grassland was destroyed. On the scorched land, only Gaia's figure could be seen lying on the ground. Her body was also in a charred state, and it was breaking little by little, like a broken ceramic, and finally, only some dust was left. The roar of the dragon and phoenix sounded, and then 2 streams of light landed in front of Captain Ling Feng and the others. They were Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, who had temporarily recovered their human forms. Representative Tsang, Representative Chu. At this time, a captain beside Ling Feng walked up and nodded to Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe. He was one of the captains of the Administration Bureau who owed the Kuan-Pung Villa Guards, Su Go. Captain Su Go. Tsang Jinshui nodded. "Thank you for your help here, I will remember this favor." Su Go said, "Representative Tsang, let's talk about this later. What happened? What did you and Representative Chu encounter?" A trace of fear flashed in Chu Xinghe's eyes, and he shook his head. "We don't know what it is, and in fact, most of the elites from the Demon Realm and Taoist Realm who came to participate in the conference have died." "What?" The captains were shocked at this time. Tsang Jinshui said, "Now is not the time to discuss, there are more than 2 of those things. We encountered hundreds of them. The battle here has probably exposed our position, and the rest will catch up soon." Su Ge looked at Ling Feng with a solemn face. There were hundreds of such terrifying things. But it was obviously very difficult to deal with one. If Hong Ling didn't shoot 3 god-killing bullets in the beginning and got rid of one first. In that case, let's leave quickly. Ling Feng nodded. On the way here, we found a cave that should be able to hide temporarily. We have a team member who is good at hiding. That's good. Tsang Jinshui nodded. After the battle, he really needed some time to recover his energy. By the way, Captain Su Ge, what did you use to deal with the first one? Chu Xinghe suddenly asked. Su Ge said casually, Taoist bullets, but they are very precious, and we can only make a few in these years. Moreover, if it's really as the 2 representatives said, most of the elites of the Taoist Association have died, I'm afraid it will be more difficult to make them in the future, alas. Chu Xinghe nodded noncommittally. After that, the team quickly walked into the forest and headed toward the cave mentioned by Ling Feng. On the grassland, a gentle breeze blew, and a white voice appeared on the scorched earth. With a cold face and a spotless figure, she was like a fairy in a fairy tale. She slowly walked toward the place where Gaia had fallen. On the way, she suddenly bent down and picked up a bullet shell from the ground, looking at it carefully. Taoist bullets. After thousands of years, it seems that humans have improved a lot. She sighed and casually threw the bullet shell to the ground. At this time, she came to the place where the first Gaia had fallen. Gaia, whose hands and head had been cut off, had turned into a pile of dust. She frowned slightly and looked at the forest in the distance. At the beginning, this Gaia had been sniped from that place. After that, she began to look around. Finally, she picked up another bullet shell from the soil, which was different from the Taoist bullet. She also put this strange bullet shell in the palm of her hand and looked at it silently. At this time, she suddenly felt that the magical power in her body was faintly unstable. This instability was quickly dispelled under her instinctive control, but it was enough for her to understand something. What is this bullet? It can actually destroy the balance of magical power. She muttered to herself, Spellbreaker? It seems that not only have they improved, but they have also created a terrible thing. This time, she didn't throw away the bullet shell but held it in her hand. She glanced at the grassland and then looked at the sky. Master, you said that you found Penglai, but after you went there was no news. Sanyang's Anatta truth has been cultivated to the limit. 500 years, where are you? Are you here? Although it's weak, Sanyang can still feel the faint green lotus sword chi. Have you also encountered this kind of combat weapon? A soft voice came from the sky. She turned around and looked up, seeing a Gaia flying toward her from afar. She was no different from the one who had fought just now, and she was no different from the one who had almost wiped out the Taoist and Demon Association. At this moment, Gaia's huge scarlet claws changed into the shape of guns and cannons. She frowned and suddenly took a step forward. At this moment, a slender green sword energy shot out from between her fingers. Like a straight ray of light, it swept past Gaia, who was in midair, and his body was instantly split into two symmetrical halves, which then turned into dust. What is this place? She lowered her head and pondered. It doesn't fit in with the shop, but it is somewhat similar. She frowned and quickly left this place. There was a strange stone forest in front of her, which seemed to be some kind of strange array from afar. She planned to go and take a look. What made Taiyinzi feel very conflicted was whether he should call Gaia out again. Since Gaia suddenly split into more than 100 parts and left together, Taiyinzi had been constantly weighing the pros and cons. At this moment, Taiyinzi felt that if he really got something from Gaia and started to rebel against the club, it seemed to be a dead end. If he couldn't solve the problem of his control being always with the boss, even if he wanted to rebel, he wouldn't be able to do much. He felt that it was more worthwhile to be with the boss. What's the situation? At this moment, Taiyinzi, who was in deep thought, suddenly heard a loud noise from afar, and then saw a huge green and red fire pillar rushing to the sky. However, after the fire pillar disappeared, there seemed to be no movement, which made Taiyinzi frown. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a bad premonition made Taiyinzi suddenly shiver. He subconsciously turned his head and saw that Wang Hu, who was subdued by Gaia and trapped by the strange gray crystal, was emitting a terrifying demonic power. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the gray crystal. Taiyinzi blinked his eyes. Cracks spread rapidly at this moment. Pack! The gray crystal was now like shattered glass shards, drifting in the air. Old devil! When you hit me just now, you said it was very comfortable, right? Let me feel comfortable too, okay? Taiyinzi swallowed his saliva. Chapter 1058. Taiyinzi suddenly thought of a problem while he was running for his life. Should he not have punched Wang Hu a few times just to have fun? This was the legendary type who would not show off until his HP was low. Once he had accumulated enough rage, he would be able to kill the seed. I only punched him a few times. I didn't stab him in the eyes, kick him in the groin, steal his heart, or pick his peaches. Was there a need to, Brother Wang Hu? Can we discuss this properly? You know I'm doing this for your own good. Bah! Old man. You don't have any other skills, but you sure are good at running for your life. I'll see how good you are at running. Wang Hu's domineering voice came from behind. Of course I can dodge. Otherwise, do you think I got the nickname "too good at running" for nothing when I was roaming the Jianghu? However, to Taiyinzi's surprise, Wang Hu's strength had indeed increased a lot, but relatively, his speed seemed to have slowed down a lot. Thinking about it this way, did Wang Hu give up his speed to increase his strength to escape from Gaia's gray crystal? He hadn't switched to this mode yet, so he couldn't catch up to him? If that was the case, there was no need to summon Gaia. Taiyinzi hadn't decided whether to use Gaia to seek death or obediently be the person in charge of the club's main god project. Brother Wang Hu, as the saying goes, peace is the most important thing. Why don't we bury the hatchet and become brothers of different surnames? With your ability and my wisdom, we can take advantage of this place. Wouldn't that be great? Get lost. Tyrant Fist. F***CK. Brother Wang Hu, don't you understand my painstaking efforts? Do you think I hit you to take revenge and take advantage of your precarious situation? You're absolutely wrong to think that way. Don't you know that you can only explode when you're full of rage? In order to stimulate your potential, I'm willing to be the bad guy. Look, aren't you out of there now? Brother Wang Hu, can you keep your fists to yourself? You're biting the hand that feeds you. Do you know how heartbroken I am now? F***ck. I've never seen such a thick-skinned and shameless person. Consider me unlucky today. Wang Hu suddenly stopped. In contrast, Taiyinzi also stopped doubtfully. At this time, Wang Hu stood still and slowly exhaled. At the same time, Wang Hu's body seemed to gradually become thinner. Under Taiyinzi's astonished gaze, Wang Hu's muscles, which were full of strength, contracted little by little. Not long after, Wang Hu's entire body had shrunk by 2 sizes. At this time, Wang Hu was even thinner and smaller than when he first appeared. What was he doing? Just as Taiyinzi was dumbfounded, Wang Hu suddenly moved. Taiyinzi only saw an afterimage. After that, he felt a feeling of imminent death coming from his abdomen. Tyrant Fist. Why did he suddenly switch to speed mode? You are Ultraman Tiga. Bearing the brunt of Wang Hu's angry fist, Taiyinzi's entire body flew backwards. After breaking a dozen stone pillars in succession, he barely managed to stop. However, at this time, Taiyinzi was not feeling well. At this time, he spat out a black substance from his mouth. After spitting out the black substance, it instantly dissipated into the air. At the same time, Taiyinzi only felt an unprecedented weakness. That feeling was as if his body had been hollowed out. Old ghost, before you die, don't say any last words. With a whoosh, Wang Hu appeared in front of Taiyinzi. He directly used his hand to grab Taiyinzi's afro hair and lifted him up. At this time, Wang Hu's fingers suddenly tightened. Taiyinzi only felt as if his head was about to explode. The pain made him unable to help but wail. Damn, he really didn't even say any last words. This is not the script. Who? Unexpectedly, at this time, Wang Hu suddenly threw Taiyinzi down. Then, he raised his head and chopped at a towering stalagmite in front of him. It was a white figure. Female again? Wang Hu suddenly became alert. He did not even notice when the figure came close. At this time, Taiyinzi was lying on the ground. At this time, he raised his head with difficulty and followed Wang Hu's gaze. At one glance, Taiyinzi was suddenly shocked. Lowly slave, it is actually. But now, Taiyinzi's tone suddenly changed. No. Junior sister, you are here. Save your brother. Hearing Taiyinzi's scream, the white figure on the stalagmite frowned slightly. Only to hear a light snort, directly waving her sleeves, turned around and left. Damn, Taiyinzi stared and hurriedly said, Junior sister, do you really not care about the friendship between fellow disciples? Don't tell me you forgot, when you went up the mountain, who built the house for you, who gave you the Taoist robe, and who told you bedtime stories. Pop! Suddenly, beside Taiyinzi, a green sword energy suddenly shot and poked a very deep hole in the ground in front of his face. Taiyinzi swallowed his saliva, and at this moment, he braced himself and said, Junior sister. Back then, when you turned into a human body, you were just a baby girl, and Master took you in. But Master was too busy with cultivation, so he asked me to take good care of you. Brother is a Taoist priest, how could I know how to take care of people? When you were hungry, I could only catch some female goats to feed you. Pop, pop, pop. 3 green sword energies shot down one after another, each one closer to Taiyinzi than the previous one. The third sword energy was less than 2 inches in front of him, and it even sank into the ground. At this time, Taiyinzi had already broken the jar and smashed it to pieces. He gritted his teeth and climbed up and pinched his throat and screamed, You just learn to eat, and I will cook spirit rice porridge for you every day. Enough. At this moment, the white figure on the stalagmite suddenly jumped down. Her fingers formed a sword seal, and a green sword energy shot out from between her fingers as if it was solid. The white-clothed woman was like a fairy flying from outer space. Holding the green sword energy, she directly pierced towards Taiyinzi's throat. I washed your diapers. The green sword energy suddenly stopped at Taiyinzi's throat, and Taiyinzi swallowed his saliva nervously. At this time, the white-clothed woman's arm suddenly swung to the distance, and the green sword energy shot out at the same time. The stalagmites on the side were instantly cut open and fell down, making rumbling sounds. This bitch's sword energy was even more terrifying than Wang Hu's fist. Taiyinzi's scalp tingled, but he didn't hurry to put on a smile. Junior sister's Green Lotus Sword Codex has improved again. I'm afraid you will catch up with Master soon. You are indeed Master's last disciple. I really feel relieved. Shameless. The white-clothed woman snorted coldly at this time. Being stared at by her like this, Taiyinzi immediately shrunk his neck. But since this bitch, junior sister, didn't kill him in the end, he should be safe for the time being. I will take this person away, no matter what grudges you have with him. The white-clothed woman turned around and glanced at Wang Hu indifferently. Wang Hu sneered at this time and pinched the joints of his fingers. Unfortunately, I must kill this old ghost today. The white-clothed woman snorted coldly and said, although this person is shameless and is also an abandoned disciple of the sect. But even so, killing him is my sect's matter. It is not the place of outsiders to be noisy. Ha 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 ha. You are the first one who dares to speak to me like this in the past 100 years. Wang Hu's demonic aura surged, and those complicated tiger stripes began to appear on his skin again. The white-clothed woman frowned. With a wave of her finger, another green sword energy shot out. Junior sister, be careful. This white tiger can transform into a divine beast. Taiyinzi reminded her at this time. But soon, the white-clothed woman looked at him coldly. Taiyinzi smiled embarrassedly at this time. I will cheer for you. Junior sister, you can do it. You are the best. Shut your dog mouth. The white-clothed woman snorted coldly. With a wave of her finger, another green sword energy shot out. This time, the sword energy was not straight. Instead, it turned into a belt of light and instantly pierced Taiyinzi firmly. Even his mouth was pierced. Taiyinzi fell to the ground at once. This kind of situation of being tied up, was it déjà vu? At this time, Wang Hu seemed to have completed his divine beast transformation. His body had once again returned to the physique that Taiyinzi said he saw at the beginning. Wang Hu twisted his neck and made a crisp popping sound. The divine beast transformation needs some time. It was not completely completed just now. Halfway through, a damn thing appeared. I am still waiting to settle the score with her. Consider yourself unlucky. You just happened to let me warm up. It's just a mid-level Tiger King pattern. The white-clothed woman said indifferently at this time. The real divine beast transformation of the white tiger is not so cheap. At best, you are just mimicking it. Heh. Seems like you know it very well? Wang Hu sneered. Let's see if you have the ability to let me complete the third stage. I don't want to use that power at all. As he spoke, Wang Hu waved his hands at the same time. In an instant, his hands were covered by a white light. When the white light dissipated, Wang Hu's arms were already wearing a thick layer of armor. White Tiger King armor. The white-clothed woman frowned. This is the inherited secret treasure of the white tiger race. Are you a direct descendant of the white tiger race? Seems like you really know it very well. Wang Hu smiled casually and looked at the sword aura of the white-clothed woman's finger. He narrowed his eyes. I wonder how hard your toothpick-like sword aura can be. The white-clothed woman did not talk nonsense at this time. The sword aura on her finger danced outside her sleeve. Suddenly, countless air waves appeared in front of her and spurted out. At this time, Wang Hu raised the gauntlet on his right hand. From the two sides of the gauntlet, it suddenly opened and turned into a shield, easily blocking the incoming air wave. The battle between the white-clothed woman and Wang Hu began. Under the sky, it completely became a duel arena between the two. In this huge stone forest maze, A large number of stalagmites fell down, and the two figures shuttled back and forth in the stone forest at extreme speed. They were actually on par with each other in the fight. This sound made Tainzi's scalp tingle. He secretly thought that the B*TCH's cultivation had been interrupted and she woke up again. After such a period of time, her magic power had probably completely recovered and she had returned to her peak state. The B*TCH now was completely different from the last time he met her at the club. If he fell into Wang Hu's hands, only death would await him. If he fell into the hands of this B*TCH, what if he was sealed for another 500 years? Faced with such a desperate situation, Tainzi at this time struggled to lift his butt, using his knees and chin as walking tools. Like a caterpillar, he quickly crawled in the direction away from these two extremely dangerous fellows. However, just as Tainzi was crawling energetically, a sword aura suddenly shot directly from the sky in front of him, forcibly cutting a gap in the path Tainzi was on. Tainzi's face was covered in dust, and he was greatly shocked. He quickly turned his head and continued to crawl in the other direction. Unexpectedly, a fist aura brushed past him, forcing Tainzi to change his direction again. Sword aura turned around. Fist aura turned around. Sword aura turned around. Fist aura turned around. You guys have had enough. Tainzi, whose face was covered in dust, simply stopped crawling at this time. He twisted his body a few times and sat up. Fight, fight, continue to fight, all of you continue to fight. There was nothing left to live for. Tainzi sighed. The bandage-like green light around his mouth had been loosened, but the other places were relatively tighter in comparison. He was still watching the battle between the woman in white and Wang Hu with his eyesight. He could no longer see what was going on. At most, he could only exclaim that it was very strong, super strong, and so on in his mind. Over time, Tainzi, who had become numb, yawned. But at this time, in front of him, a small figure slowly descended. It was Gaia. Finally there's a reaction, Tainzi suddenly shivered. Long ago when Wang Hu switched to speed mode to beat him to the ground, almost killing him, Tainzi had already frantically called for Gaia. But Tainzi did not expect that Gaia would actually take so long to appear. No matter how he looked at it, this guy was a retard. Prototype Universal Treasure House Administrator Gaia at your service, respected secondary authority holder. Can you remove the secondary authority? Gaia did not speak, only quietly looking at Tainzi. Forget it, release me. Tainzi skillfully gave the order. Gaia stretched out his palm and touched Tainzi. The green light around Tainzi's body instantly disappeared. Tainzi swung his arm and laughed. At this time, a green sword light and a fist light wave flew toward Tainzi at the same time. Gaia, protect me. Understood. The colorful light shield easily blocked the sword light and the light wave. At the same time, Wang Hu and the woman in white who were fighting instantly separated. The woman in white was now standing on a stalagmite. As for Wang Hu, he was now on the ground. The woman in white looked at Tainzi and Gaia beside him and frowned slightly. Wang Hu sneered. You're finally back. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Ha 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 ha. Tainzi laughed wildly and stepped forward, proudly saying, Wang Hu, looks like you've forgotten the fear of being dominated by my tyrant scissors. And you, lowly slave, you actually used sword energy to stab me. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know the principle of senior brothers being respected. Gaia, catch these two for me. At this moment, Gaia slowly floated up. Chapter 1059. Master, this mountain is so strange. We've been flying for such a long time, but we haven't shortened the distance. Above the clouds, two figures were rapidly flying towards the mountain peak that was peeking out from the clouds. The high-speed movement had already torn open a long hole in the cloud. Suddenly, the two figures came to a stop. If one took a closer look, one would realize that only one of them was flying. The other one was being held by the collar and was being carried all the way. Su Zijuan and Jessica. They arrived at the scene where the Jade Dragon Pillar appeared almost at the same time as Taoist and Monster. They were also transferred to this place by the power released by the Jade Dragon Pillar. They had been flying for a long time. The towering mountain peak instantly became Su Zijuan's target. She speculated that not only her, but also all the people present at that time were transferred to this place. Therefore, instead of wasting time to find them, it was better to fly towards this obvious target. Perhaps they would meet it. However, Su Zijuan didn't expect that they couldn't fly over this mountain peak. "Tsk, we can only walk on the ground. What a waste of time." Su Zijuan was quite unhappy. She preferred simple, rough and huge things. "Master, there seems to be something over there." Suddenly, Jessica pointed to the front left. Su Zijuan followed her finger and looked over. Then she frowned and flew over with Jessica in her hand. The airflow dispersed the clouds, revealing a faintly discernible cyan light in the clouds. Soon, they approached the cyan light. "What's this?" Jessica looked at the light with astonishment. "A sword?" It was indeed a sword. The sword looked quite ancient and didn't seem to be made with modern craftsmanship. It stood vertically in the sky and hid in the clouds. It seemed to have been there for a long time. Su Zijuan stretched out her hand to grab the hilt of the ancient sword. However, the moment her palm touched the hilt, the ancient sword suddenly trembled. Then Su Zijuan withdrew her hand as fast as lightning. Jessica couldn't help but widen her eyes. At this moment, her powerful master's palm was covered with blood. There were dozens of wounds on her palm. Su Zijuan looked down at her injured palm and was stunned for a moment. What a sharp sword intent. Interesting. After saying that, Su Zijuan sneered. Her bloody palm healed at a terrifying speed. After that, Su Zijuan reached out to grab the ancient sword again. But this time, Su Zijuan's palm was also covered with a layer of dark red demonic power. When she grasped the hilt of the ancient sword again, the ancient sword trembled again, but this time, Su Zijuan didn't let it go. How can a mere ancient sword compare to the Xianyuan sword? Be quiet. However, not only did his words fail to calm the ancient sword down, it even provoked its ferocity. At this moment, a green light flashed on the blade of the ancient sword. Then, numerous sword chi shot out from the blade and flew away indiscriminately. Su Zijuan was slightly shocked. For a moment, she couldn't hold her palm firmly and was bounced off by the ancient sword again. "Master!" At the same time, Jessica screamed. Su Zijuan looked back and saw several deep wounds on Jessica's body by the sword chi released by the ancient sword. "Tut!" Su Zijuan clicked her tongue and pulled Jessica back quickly. At the same time, a crimson light cover emerged from her body and covered her and Jessica. The sword chi stopped after releasing for a while. At this moment, the ancient sword quieted down. The sword chi around it didn't dissipate. The sword chi turned into the shape of a lotus and protected the ancient sword in the center. It seemed that the pure demonic power couldn't do anything to the ancient sword. Su Zijuan frowned. She could feel that the sword chi released a wisp of sword essence. It was not a murderous intent, but a kind of arrogance. "There's arrogance in the sword. It seems that your master isn't an ordinary person." Su Zijuan heaved a sigh of relief. She liked the ancient sword more, but your master abandoned you here. What are you waiting for? No matter who your master is, I'm not much worse than him. Taking a deep breath, Su Zijuan grabbed the ancient sword again. But this time, it wasn't demonic power that covered her hand, but a strange power that frightened Jessica. But her master seemed to be struggling to use this power. Jessica could see Su Zijuan's solemn expression and her slightly contracted pupils. Jessica was clear that she was suffering from some kind of pain. At this moment, Su Zijuan's hand passed through the green lotus without any resistance and once again grasped the ancient sword's hilt. "I'm the rightful inheritor of Kelowna's Xianyuan sword, The doppelganger of Kelowna's Xian Yuan sword. I'm the head of all swords in the world. Bow down and submit to me. The ancient sword vibrated again, making a buzzing sound. It wasn't like a sad cry, but a war song. It didn't submit to her. Su Zijuan couldn't believe it, but at the same time, it aroused her competitive spirit. At this moment, she resisted the repulsion of the Yellow King's power to Ba's body and grasped the handle of the ancient sword tightly. Jessica, hide behind me! Su Zijuan shouted. Jessica quivered and hugged Su Zijuan's body tightly, turning behind her. At this moment, the sword chi was like a storm. Thousands of sword chi burst out and swept across the sky, dispersing the clouds in the sky instantly. Storm. It was like being in the storm of sword chi. At this moment, Su Zijuan was struggling to hold on. It was mostly due to the counterattack of the two forces that didn't like each other. The sound of the ancient sword became louder and louder. At this moment, a loud clang was heard. The ancient sword broke away from Su Zijuan's hand and rushed to the ground in a flash. Master? Where did it go? Jessica clearly felt the slight trembling of Su Zijuan's arm. Su Zijuan lowered her head, frowning and saying nothing. I feel a sense of urgency and excitement, Su Zijuan muttered. Maybe its master is summoning it. I'd like to see who its master is with such an arrogant sword. After saying that, Su Zijuan turned over, grabbing Jessica's collar and falling to the ground rapidly. As far as the eye could see, half of the huge stone forest had probably been destroyed. It was unknown if its original maze-like formation could still be preserved. But this wasn't the most important thing. Wang Hu thought. The huge and angular gauntlet was now full of cracks. They were like decorative patterns, giving the gauntlet a broken beauty. In fact, it was broken. What caused Wang Hu to be in a state of doubting life was that, apart from the third stage power that he said he did not want to use, he, who had already gone all out, had been knocked down to the ground. He had been easily knocked down. Not only was the inherited secret treasure of the White Tiger clan, the White Tiger King armor, broken, but his bones were also aching faintly. Every muscle in his body seemed to be crying out in protest. Wang Hu felt like a car that was about to be scrapped but still forced himself to participate in a rally race. As a result, he knelt in the middle of the race and emitted thick smoke. He was lying on the ground. Above his head was a small figure that was so powerful that it was almost like a cheat. Behind her, there was an endless stream of thunderballs. Not far from him was the woman in white who was equally matched with him. She was also struggling, but she wasn't knocked down to the ground like him. She could barely walk on the battlefield. From this point of view, this woman in white seemed to be a little stronger than him. In this short period of time, Wang Hu suffered several blows in succession. This made him wonder if he, who was known as the most outstanding genius of the 4 heavenly spirit clans in the past 1,000 years, was actually a little exaggerated after defeating the strongest of the other 3 clans of the 4 heavenly spirit clans? Or was it actually because the 4 heavenly spirit clans were generally not strong enough? Legend had it that when the demon clan was still alive, every powerful demon clan who could transform into a divine beast could move mountains and fill seas. Cough cough. Wang Hu coughed twice and spat out a mouthful of pus and blood. Maybe it was because of his self-esteem, or maybe it was because of his unwillingness to admit defeat that was hidden in his temperament. He supported his leg bones that were almost shattered and forced himself to stand up. The movement that was too forced caused the White Tiger King armor, which was originally broken and could only be barely glued together, to shatter and scatter from his arms in an instant. Wang Hu stared at the old ghost who stayed out of the battle. He felt that this old ghost was really repulsive. He really wanted to punch him in the face and cover his face with mud. Third, madam, just admit your mistake obediently. For the sake of our former sect mates, as long as you kneel down and admit your mistake to me, and massage my shoulders and legs, I can consider letting you go. The voice that was so despicable that it penetrated the bone marrow floated to the battlefield at this time. The so-called villain who got his way was probably like this. However, wasn't this old ghost too unambitious? Was it enough to just massage his shoulders and legs? Wang Hu frowned, but that terrifying little girl was completely obedient to this old ghost. It was really difficult to deal with her. Taiyinzi, you never change. The woman in white stopped at this time. Her finger moved, and a green sword light instantly cut open a thunderball. However, she knew that Gaia in front of her seemed to have an endless source of energy. The power of these thunderballs could be seen from the fact that they could directly destroy the White Tiger King armor. However, her magic power was rapidly consumed every minute and every second. Defeat was only a matter of time, and the opponent probably hadn't used all his strength yet. This seemed to be Taiyinzi's order to capture, and not destroy or something like that. Little junior sister, after so many years, you still have this face. Taiyinzi shook his head at this time and suddenly said angrily, What right do you have to teach me? I am the senior brother. Gaia, teach this little girl a good lesson for me. Taiyinzi, have you forgotten that I am now your boss's customer? You dare to touch me? The woman in white suddenly sneered at this time. This immediately made Taiyinzi's heart rise. She had indeed bought 2 years of time to stay in the club. She had also temporarily acted as a maid for a period of time, and in any case, she had served the boss before. Based on his boss's stubborn nature of remembering old friendships, what if Taiyinzi's face was gloomy and uncertain, but Gaia directly executed the order after receiving it, without any hesitation. At this moment, the lightning balls suddenly elongated. They actually transformed from spheres into the shape of spears. At this time, countless thunder spears floated behind Gaia. Spears had penetrative properties. If one was hit by one, it wouldn't feel good. Don't kill her. Just teach him a lesson. Taiyinzi, whose face was gloomy, suddenly added, Damn it, if you lie on the bed for 2 years, the deal will be done, right? Gaia's thunder spears had already shot out. It was like a once-in-a-100-year meteor shower, but this time, it was a golden meteor shower. The thunder spears easily destroyed the sword light that the woman in white shot out. The woman in white bitterly held on for 10 seconds before her left shoulder was pierced by a thunder spear. In the next moment, her arms and legs were also pierced by a thunder spear. The lightning that poured into her body exploded on her body. Her usually cold face now revealed a painful expression. After a round of lightning spears, the white-clothed woman was already covered in cuts and bruises. But behind Gaia, those thunder spears once again appeared, as if they were endless. This made the woman in white feel a sense of despair. The woman in white held her chest and coughed out a mouthful of pus and blood. She half knelt on the ground. Taiyinzi glanced at her and opened his mouth. His expression changed slightly, but he gritted his teeth and looked at Gaia. Capture her. Understood. A colorful ribbon that had easily tied up Wang Hu shot out from Gaia's side. It was not only aimed at the woman in white but also at Wang Hu. Wang Hu struggled for a while before giving up. He only stared at Taiyinzi with a pair of gloomy eyes. The Tiger King tattoo on his body gradually changed color and his pupils gradually became vertical slits. On the other side, the injured woman in white was also firmly tied up by the colorful ribbon. She gritted her teeth and looked coldly at Taiyinzi. Shaosher. Taiyinzi snorted coldly, but he did not dare to look at the woman in white. He could only look away. Bitch, I advise you to quickly apologize to me. But at this moment, a green light suddenly shot down from the sky. The green light that shot down directly cut off the connection between the colorful ribbon and Gaia. An ancient sword was floating vertically above the ground, letting out a soft sword hum. At the same time, the woman in white and Taiyinzi's eyes were locked on the ancient sword. This is not. Taiyinzi's face was filled with horror. He subconsciously took a few steps forward and opened his eyes. His voice trembled. This is not Masters. Ching. Chapter 1060. The name of the sword was Green Lotus Sword Song. Floating in the air, it approached Qin Chuyu bit by bit. The slightly trembling blade, the light humming sound, and the wisp of sky-blue sword light were like a guide, making Qin Chuyu's almost dried-up spiritual power surge out from her limbs and bones bit by bit. She was still injured. But the sword intent obtained from the secret swordsmanship of the sect was resonated. Qin Chuyu instinctively grasped the hilt of the Green Lotus Sword Song. Clang! The sound of the sword rang from all directions. At the same time, wisps of cyan smoke suddenly blew up from the surroundings. The soft cyan smoke scattered, with Qin Chuyu as the center, and drifted hundreds of meters away. Cut! The cyan smoke was like the sharpest blade, cutting everything with a light stroke. It wasn't a straight cut because the cyan smoke was so soft and curved like a line. A colorful light shield suddenly appeared in front of Taiyinzi, blocking the cyan smoke outside, but the cyan smoke and the light shield collided, giving out a fierce chi-chi sound. Taiyinzi suddenly quivered. Gaia's appearance had changed. Pieces of colorful light wings as thin as cicadas' wings spread out from her back, and the 6 light wings swayed gently like willow catkins. Her gorgeous dress began to shrink, sticking close to her skin and transforming into a tight-fitting battle suit. Pitch-black sharp blades shot out from her wrists, and her legs turned into streamlined armor. Her purple pupils now had numerous overlapping diamond-shaped patterns. Discovered, danger. Gaia lightly spat out such words. Taiyinzi was stunned. Though he had only seen Gaia twice, Gaia's appearance now was obviously abnormal. For example, she became serious. But, Green Lotus Sword Song, Master's Sword. At this moment, Qin Chuyu looked at the Green Lotus Sword Song in her hand. There was a kind of joy and also a kind of sadness. The moment she held the sword hilt, it rushed into her spirit. She seemed to have heard a man's murmur at this moment. Qin Chuyu clenched her teeth, waving the sword lightly. The cyan smoke that spread out seemed to be guided back to the sword blade. As for the huge stalagmites within 100 meters, they had already been cut into pieces one by one and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Gaia moved at this moment. With a flap of the light wings, Gaia, who was waving the sword in both hands, shot out like a bullet. The speed was so fast that Qin Chuyu lost sight of Gaia instantly. But at this moment, the Green Lotus Sword Song in her hand transmitted a strange pulling force, which pulled Qin Chuyu's arm upwards. Bang! That was the collision between the sword blade on Gaia's wrist and the Green Lotus Sword Song. A visible ripple spread out from the collision. So heavy! Qin Chuyu felt numb in her hands. Her fingers almost loosened. She couldn't hold of the Green Lotus Sword Song anymore. The heavy impact force even made Qin Chuyu's legs slightly bend down. If this continued, even if the Green Lotus Sword Song could deal with Gaia, her body wouldn't be able to bear it first. Master's sword appeared here. Then what about Master? She couldn't waste time here. Qin Chuyu calculated quickly in her mind. Gaia! Stop! Unexpectedly, at this moment, to Qin Chuyu's surprise, Taiyinzi issued such an order to Gaia. After receiving the order, Gaia retreated to midair. However, she was still in her combat state. Danger source discovered, recommended to be removed. Why do you have so much to say? I told you to stop, so stop. Taiyinzi angrily shouted at Gaia. Gaia's purple pupils flashed, locking onto the Green Lotus Sword Song again. Danger source discovered, recommended to be removed again. Respected secondary authority holder, that's my master's sword. How dare you hit me, I'll kill you. Obviously, the latter part of the sentence, kill you, was impossible. But Taiyinzi's face was gloomy, and the despicable expression on his face was gone. Qin Chuyu frowned at this moment. Gaia's eyes locked onto Taiyinzi, but Taiyinzi didn't back off. After a long while, the light wings behind her spread out bit by bit. She put on her gorgeous dress again and floated down slowly. Taiyinzi walked towards Qin Chuyu step by step with a gloomy face. Qin Chuyu looked at Taiyinzi with a complicated expression. At this moment, Tai Yinzi finally arrived in front of Qinqiu. He suddenly knelt down on the ground, cupping his hands and kowtowing. Unfilial disciple Tai Yinzi greets master's sword. Dong dong dong, 3 kowtows. After that, Tai Yinzi stood up directly, but the gloomy expression on his face didn't fade away. Qinqiu's expression was complicated. Her lips moved slightly, but she didn't say anything. Tai Yinzi heaved a sigh, asking in a deep voice, Sanyang, why is master's sword here? I don't know. Qinqiu sighed, shaking her head. Green Lotus Sword Song seems to be attracted by the sword intent of the Green Lotus Sword Classic in my body. Tai Yinzi was silent at this moment. Seeing Qinqiu's expression changing several times, he gritted his teeth and said, That year master disappeared mysteriously and didn't come back. Later you expelled me. Even if I didn't accept it, I had nothing to say since master appointed you as the school head. I won't deny it even if I don't accept it, but, Qinqiu snorted, master isn't here. You sneaked into master's secret room and tried to steal the secret book. Of course I should expel you. Tai Yinzi shook his head. Let's not talk about our grudges first. Tell me why master disappeared that year. You sealed me for 500 years, why don't you tell me the truth? Why did Green Lotus Sword Song suddenly appear here? You dare to say you don't know? Qinqiu smiled bitterly. I really don't know. Since I came to this place, I could feel a trace of master's sword intent at all times, but I couldn't find any trace of master when I went missing. As for Green Lotus Sword Song, I don't know either. It has always been here. Green Lotus Sword Song is master's life and dual cultivation sword. How could he leave Green Lotus Sword Song behind? Tai Yinzi's expression changed slightly. Could it be that master? Tai Yinzi recalled what Gaia said. Gaia seemed to have discovered something unusual about the appearance of Green Lotus Sword Song, or Gaia had met Green Lotus Sword Song before, and might have even fought with him, or fought with his master. Master might even be in the battle with Gaia. Tai Yinzi suddenly looked at Gaia with a gloomy face. Gaia, tell me honestly. Did you fight with the owner of this sword? Where is he? Unable to detect any trace of life within the range of activity. Result determined as dead or left, you really. Tai Yinzi clenched his teeth, looking at Gaia with eyes full of killing intent. You better not let me know that you harmed my master. Otherwise, I'll kill you even if I have to give up my job as an emissary. Unable to detect any trace of life within the range of activity. Result determined as dead or left, you idiot. Tai Yinzi scolded. Tell me, why did you fight with my master? This information is missing from the memory bank, unable to answer, damn it. Tai Yinzi clenched his teeth. You really have a problem. Is your brain damaged? Unexpectedly, Qinqiu suddenly asked, This is Peng Lai? Tai Yinzi looked at Qinqiu with a surprised expression. Qinqiu said, Master, he said he found Peng Lai and would come back after a trip, but he never came back. That's all I know. This place is the Peng Lai treasure house. Gaia said slowly, all life forms that enter the Peng Lai treasure trove will automatically obtain the right to purchase any item in the Peng Lai treasure trove. Hearing Gaia's words, Qinqiu frowned. This place is really similar to the club, but, she looked at Tai Yinzi again, but Tai Yinzi said impatiently, Don't ask me. I don't know. I've been an emissary for less than a year, so I don't know a lot of things. But here, my connection with the boss is cut off. I don't know if I'm restricted or this place can block the boss's sense to me. Didn't you buy a human from a shop? You should know better than me. This place is incompatible with the place where you work, but it's also similar. It's weird, I can't explain it clearly. Qinqiu shook her head, but since Master's Green Lotus Sword Song appeared here, there might be other clues about Master here. What are you going to do? What else can I do, of course? A streak of rapidly falling red light suddenly interrupted Tai Yinzi's words. After the red light stopped, a 13 or 14-year-old girl wearing a cap appeared in front of everyone. She was carrying a 20-year-old foreign woman with a voluptuous figure. Su Zijuan and Jessica. After landing, Su Zijuan saw the green lotus sword song in Qin Chuyu's hand at first sight, then she looked around. Her eyes soon landed on Taiyinzi, who was standing beside Qin Chuyu. Black soul. Su Zijuan frowned. But her eyes didn't stay for too long. Instead, she started to look around. After glancing at Gaia, Su Zijuan's eyes paused for a short while, and her face became more dignified. After that, her eyes turned to Wang Hu. At this moment, Wang Hu was tied up by colorful light ribbons, lying on the ground. Su Zijuan opened her mouth in surprise. Emperor White Talisman? Why are you here? By the way, you were also transferred, but you don't seem to be in a good condition. Wang Hu. Huang White Talisman's current condition was indeed abnormal. Lying on the ground, he hadn't spoken for a long time. He couldn't feel any demonic power from his body, but the Tiger King marks on his body had unknowingly turned golden. At the same time, his vertical pupils had mutated into silver. At this moment, Huang White Talisman stood up slowly like floating. His demonic power still couldn't be felt. However, the belt of light around him had been broken free. Afterwards, an enormous wave of demonic energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas erupted from Huang Baifu's body. That demonic power was like a substance, turning into a huge demonic power light beam, soaring to the sky. And in this light beam, Huang White Talisman's pupils had completely turned silver. White Tiger Divine Beast Transformation Qin Chuyu became more dignified. This level is already a high-level Divine Beast Transformation. I didn't expect that a descendant of White Tiger could reach this level in this era. It seems that I've underestimated him. White demonic power wrapped around Huang White Talisman's body like lightning. He walked towards Gaia step by step. His target was Gaia. At this moment, Su Zijuan held Jessica's hand and stepped back. Master? Do you know this guy? Su Zijuan said indifferently. He's called Huang White Talisman, the young master of White Tiger Clan in Kelowna. Though he's the young master, he's already ruled all his clansmen. Speaking of which, he's the illegitimate son of the former clan leader, but his White Tiger bloodline is very strong. But his Divine Beast transformation isn't very good. It's unstable and he'll lose his mind. Seems very powerful? Jessica was shocked. She had seen more and more transcendence during this period, but she still couldn't have a direct understanding of this complicated time. Su Zijuan didn't say anything. She pulled Jessica back a little. The situation is unclear. We don't know where these guys come from. Let's wait and see. Huang Baifu has lost control twice. The first time, he crippled his own father. The second time, he beat up the entire Green Dragon tribe until they couldn't raise their heads. The previous Green Dragon tribe leader is still hanging on the pillar of shame and has abdicated. Su Zijuan shrugged, saying, Now that the old woman isn't here. If we want to stop him, we have to wait for him to stop. I don't like to do this kind of strenuous and unrewarding thing. It was really her master's style. Jessica sighed, but she still hid behind Su Zijuan. She wasn't even a shrimp in this battle. Specks of light emerged from the bodies of the living dead in the tomb. They scattered in the tomb, illuminating the surroundings. Luochio stretched out his hand. A faint light spot fell into his palm and disappeared like melting snow. Luochio smiled gently. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from behind. With her hands folded in front of her and her head slightly lowered, Miss Servant Girl walked straight to him. Behind Yu Yi, Taisetsu was looking around curiously. Master. Boss. Luochio smiled, looking at Taisetsu. You're in good spirits. Taisetsu smiled happily, then shrugged his head. As long as you don't throw me back to that damn place, I'll always be in good spirits. Luochio chuckled. Master, you're in a good mood. Yu Yi said softly. Then she walked to Luochio, taking out a handkerchief and wiping Luochio's palm carefully. It seemed that there was some dust on it because of the terracotta army. I've heard a lot of interesting stories, Luo Qiu said, looking up at the fluorescent light in the tomb and whispering, the last light before it dissipates is weak, but it's also very tenacious. And those living dead finally turned into dust, falling down one by one purified. Yu Yi said softly, Master, you've spent too much time. It doesn't matter, it's not really a waste. Luoqiu said softly, besides, I just want you to see this scene, isn't it beautiful? The fluorescent spots rose. The scene in front of them was like a firefly colony by the river in summer. It was so magnificent that people couldn't help but quiet down. Taisetsu sighed, thinking that he'd better go to the crevice to fight small monsters. This dog food would kill him. Chapter 1061. Huang Hu, perhaps it was more appropriate to call him Huang Baifu now. Huang Baifu, who had completely activated the divine beast bloodline in his body, shot out like a cannonball. He ignored everyone else and threw a punch at Gaia. The rainbow-colored light shield had opened up before the fist came back. When Huang Baifu's fist landed on the rainbow-colored light shield, the seemingly soft layer of light sunk deep into it. At this moment, Huang Baifu let out a low roar of unknown meaning. His fist kept attacking Gaia's colorful light shield. His entire arm had sunk into the colorful light shield. The fist was about to break through the colorful light shield and hit Gaia's body. Gaia's purple pupils suddenly flickered. The battle form that had changed after Green Lotus Sword's song appeared again. When the colorful light wings spread out again, the light shield was also broken by Huang Baifu. Seeing that Huang Baifu's fierce fist was about to hit Gaia's face, Gaia waved his arm and blocked Huang Baifu's fist with his palm. The majestic demonic power was like a propeller, pushing Huang Baifu's body. His entire body seemed to have turned into a light wave under the eruption of demonic power. Gaia stretched out his hand, and the dense lightning spears appeared again. Like an inexhaustible treasure, the lightning spears shot out one after another. But at this moment, a green light suddenly shot over. It was Green Lotus Sword Song in Qinqiu's hand. At this moment, Green Lotus Sword Song broke away from Qinqiu's hand and stabbed towards Gaia without saying anything. Moreover, the angle of Green Lotus Sword Song's attack was extremely tricky. Gaia seemed to have sensed it. He waved his other hand at lightning speed, but Green Lotus Sword Song was still faster. The green light pierced through Gaia's body and soared into the sky. After Green Lotus Sword Song's sneak attack succeeded, Gaia's palm that blocked Huang Baifu's fist seemed to tremble. Roar! A huge roar came from Huang Baifu's mouth. His fist finally broke through Gaia's palm and hit Gaia's body. Gaia's body flew backward, but Huang Baifu didn't stop. His legs suddenly bent, and then there was a sonic boom. Huang Baifu actually caught up with Gaia, who was flying backward. Countless fist shadows bombarded Gaia's body. The scene made Taiyinzi dumbfounded. He subconsciously glanced at Green Lotus Sword Song, which had returned to Qinqiu's hand, and his expression was a bit strange. Master, when did your sword learn how to play tricks on people? Even so, it was an undeniable fact that Huang Baifu had beaten up Gaia. At this moment, in Taiyinzi's eyes, Huang Baifu was no longer the Chengtaro who liked to pose. He was clearly a red-haired man who liked to wear pants with a belt. He had completely turned into a beast. Boom! Huang Baifu put his palms together and smashed Gaia's body like a heavy hammer. Gaia's body directly fell to the ground. The beating was like a wave, surging in all directions, followed by countless cracks. This made Taiyinzi, Qinqiu, and Su Zijuan jump up and stay in the air, nervously watching this terrifying battle. The divine beast transformed Huang Baifu was like a never-ending battle machine. At this moment, he launched a crazy attack again, charging into the huge cloud of dust. Taiyinzi frowned. Gaia wouldn't be blown up by the divine beast transformed Huang Baifu, right? Gaia seemed to have some clues about his master's disappearance, however. At this moment, a ray of light suddenly shot out from the cloud of dust. It was as thin as a pencil, and it streaked across the ground. After that, a miserable cry was heard. Chinchuyu frowned and waved the green lotus sword song, causing a breeze to sweep away the dust on the ground. What? The one who turned pale with fright was Suzijuan. As a spectator, she saw everything clearly because Chinchuyu had cleared the obstacles. In the deep pit, Huang Baifu almost fell to the ground. The reason why he didn't fall down completely was that his hair was grabbed by Gaia's small hand. Huang Baifu's right arm had disappeared. It fell to a place not far away, and the wound on his right shoulder was dripping with blood. There was a blood stain on Gaia's face caused by the splashing of blood. Gaia's purple pupils flickered without any expression. She was completely still. Suddenly, Gaia swung her arm that was grabbing Huang Baifu's hair, and Huang Baifu was thrown into the slanting waves of the pit. At this moment, the golden tiger mark on Huang Baifu's body had disappeared, and his body was like mud. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. But Gaia wasn't in good condition. There was a very obvious wound on her chest, which was caused by the green lotus sword song. At this moment, Gaia slowly flew up into the air, still expressionless, but she suddenly flew towards Taiyinzi. The green lotus sword song waved Chinchuyu's arm, making a defensive gesture, but Gaia stopped in front of Taiyinzi. Gaia's gaze swept over Taiyinzi. Her purple pupils shot out a ray of light, scanning Taiyinzi from top to bottom. Gaia. Taiyinzi frowned. He remembered that he had been scanned by Gaia once. Alien source possession rate 571%, Eternal Kingdom citizen status met. Hidden command triggered. Command executed. What? Taiyinzi was stunned. But before he could figure out what had happened, the sharp blade on Gaia's arm suddenly pierced into his chest. Taiyinzi's eyes instantly widened in pain. What's wrong with this idiot? After that, the lightning from the sharp blade directly annihilated his consciousness. In the blink of an eye, Taiyinzi lost his consciousness. The green lotus sword song lifted Chinchuyu's arm and chopped towards Gaia without any hesitation. But Gaia waved her arm and chopped back. Chinchuyu was no match for it, and her whole body was chopped to the ground. Gaia didn't seem to have the intention to pursue. She just lifted the unconscious Taiyinzi and flew away. After forcefully pushing away a huge rock on her body, Chinchuyu coughed out a mouthful of blood and stood up slowly. The green lotus sword song had already regained his silence. She frowned and looked at the direction Gaia flew away. Gaia seemed to be abnormal in the end. She actually took the initiative to attack Taiyinzi and took him away. She didn't know why. Behind the huge pit, two figures landed slowly. They landed at the place where Huang Baifu was thrown away by Gaia. They were the two girls who appeared after the green lotus sword song. Chinchuyu didn't say anything. She just stayed alert and looked at Suzijuan and Jessica from afar. After landing, Jessica ran to Huang Baifu at once. She turned his body over carefully and checked his carotid artery. "Master, this guy is still alive," Jessica said quickly. Suzijuan walked in at this moment. She glanced at Huang Baifu, whose broken arm was still bleeding, and frowned. She suddenly grabbed the air and Huang Baifu's severed arm flew directly into Suzijuan's hand. Jessica thought Suzijuan was going to connect Huang Baifu's arm. Unexpectedly, Suzijuan suddenly shouted, "What are you waiting for? Use something to connect his blood." "What? This thing is very nutritious," Suzijuan said naturally. "This guy has thick skin and flesh. It's not a big deal to bleed some blood. Hurry up, connect as much as you can. This guy has turned into a divine beast to such an extent. His white tiger bloodline is very strong. The blood of the four spirits of the sky is second only to the blood of Shinryu." "Then, do we need to draw the blood from his arm too?" Jessica asked with a weird expression. Suzijuan said, "Take it first. When he needs it, we'll use his arm to trick him again." Jessica. Jessica looked at her master and kept silent. She felt that her mysterious and cold image seemed to have disappeared after she was saved by her master in the Middle East. At this moment, Huang Baifu's right arm disappeared without knowing how Su Zijuan operated it. After that, Su Zijuan threw a bamboo tube to Jessica and asked her to squeeze Huang Baifu's blood out. Actually, the bleeding speed of Huang Baifu's wound had slowed down. This body seemed to have a strong self-healing ability. Jessica hurriedly used a container to collect the blood. Su Zijuan jumped up and landed in front of Qinqiu. Su Zijuan sized up Green Lotus sword again. Is this your sword? Qinqiu frowned. Green Lotus sword drew a sword flower and then put it behind his back. Don't be nervous, Su Zijuan said indifferently. I thought this sword didn't have an owner. I just like it a bit. Since it has an owner, I won't take it away casually. Of course, if you want to give it to me or sell it to me, it's another matter. Where did you meet it? Qinqiu sized up Su Zijuan. This girl gave her a sense of danger, and Green Lotus sword also gave her a vague hostility. In the sky. Su Zijuan shrugged. It seemed to have stayed in the sky for a long time. Qinqiu's face suddenly became anxious. Is there anything around it? Nothing, except for white clouds. Su Zijuan squinted at Qinqiu, saying suddenly, This sword suddenly flew out and fell into your hand. It seemed to be guided by you. But from your tone, are you saying that you're not the owner of this sword? She still didn't restrain her desire to get it. Qinqiu said indifferently, This is my master's sword. It was guided by my sword intent, so it found its way to me automatically. It's the life of my master's sword and others can't touch it. This sword is really arrogant. Su Zijuan nodded approvingly. It seems that only people with the same bloodline can carry it. Forget it, since it's your master's, it's natural for him to pass it to his disciple. Just take it as I didn't say anything. Then, where's your master? Su Zijuan's interest in this sword immediately shifted to its owner. This sword didn't yield under the might of Kelowna's Xianyuan sword. Instead, it had a kind of arrogance, which really made Su Zijuan very curious about its owner. In the past hundreds of years in Kelowna, she had never heard of such a swordsman. Could it be a cultivator from a long time ago? He's missing. I came here just to find some clues about him. Qinqiu shook her head. Su Zijuan asked curiously, May I ask who your master is? Qinqiu now had an admiring look on her face. She said softly, People call him Banished Immortal or Householder Qing Lian. Tai Bai Sword Immortal. Su Zijuan opened her mouth slightly. It's him? As she said, Su Zijuan looked at Qinqiu up and down. It's said that Tai Bai Sword Immortal once took in a female disciple, whose original body was a fairy fox. Later on, she gave up her demon nature and became a human. Is that human you? Qinqiu frowned, as if she didn't want others to talk about her past. Su Zijuan didn't care about Qinqiu's displeasure. She glanced at the ancient sword behind her and smiled. So it's the famous Green Lotus sword song. No wonder you're so arrogant. You're just like your master, arrogant because of your talent. Qinqiu's eyes suddenly turned cold. Su Zijuan was always sharp-tongued, and this time she was no exception. That's the evaluation of people in the world, and I'm not wrong. But if you want to protect your master's dignity, I won't stop you. But how much strength do you have left? Her physical strength and magical power were dried up, and she was seriously injured by Gaia. Now she could barely stand. Take it. Su Zijuan turned her palm, and a bottle was thrown to Qinqiu. Recover first. I don't know if that weird thing will come again. Qinqiu couldn't figure out Su Zijuan's capricious character, so she asked with doubt, You are? Me? Su Zijuan paused for a moment, then chuckled, I'm just a living dead. Qinqiu judged the current situation quickly, then sat down with her legs crossed and opened the bottle. There was some liquid with a slight smell of blood inside. Qinqiu frowned, raised her head and drank it, then began to regulate her breath. Seeing Qinqiu begin to regulate her breath, Su Zijuan squinted her eyes at the white neck exposed from her collar. At this moment Jessica ran over. Master, Huang Baifu's wound has stopped bleeding, but he hasn't woken up yet. Oh, then throw him away. Saying this, Su Zijuan waved her hand, and a bloody demon aura rushed out, dragging Huang Baifu's body up. The bloody demon aura brought Huang Baifu's body up to the sky, and then turned into a huge claw. Then it actually threw Huang Baifu away. No one knew where he was thrown to. Su Zijuan just clapped her hands, saying happily, "Well, now he won't know what happened." A crack suddenly appeared in the quiet mountain valley. After that, Luoqiu came in first, followed by Yu Yi, and finally Taisetsu. After coming in, Taisetsu started to look around. This was the place he wanted to come, according to the contents of the old account book Yu Yi showed him. The contents were very strange, asking the club to send a high-level black soul envoy to this place. And then? Taisetsu looked at Yu Yi, asking curiously, "What should I do next?" Yu Yi shook her head. "The contents are just to send the high-level black soul envoy here. I don't know what will happen next." "Okay, I always feel that I'll be cheated," Taisetsu muttered. Suddenly, Taisetsu looked up at the sky. "Boss, is there something flying over there?" Luoqiu looked up curiously. The black shadow in the sky became clearer and clearer, and then it fell to the ground. It fell to the ground in a painful way. Taisetsu uttered a cry. Chapter 1062. Although the viewing time had stopped, the two Gaias in the myriad essence pool didn't stop printing. Instead, they were almost done. Jiang's eyes couldn't help but blur, not because of Gaia's almost perfect face, but because of the technology behind her creation. This seemed to have rekindled Jiang's passion for science. After the first Gaia was printed, a conveyor belt-like thing came out of the myriad essence pool and sent the printed Gaia out. Even the clothes were printed, but it was made of a strange material similar to a combat suit. What exactly was the reassembly of the pool? Even though Jiang's was very curious, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get more information from the control panel, except for the folder that seemed to be Gaia's memories. He couldn't understand anything else. He didn't even have a way to copy the information. Jiang's could only use his memory to memorize everything he saw. At this time, the first printed Gaia had left the pool, but this new body didn't move. Jiang's glanced at Gaia, who brought him here, and found that she still had her head down, completely in a standby state. Jiang's gritted his teeth, mustered up his courage, and walked in front of the first printed Gaia, calling it twice, but there was no response. The newly printed Gaia's skin was abnormally pale, unlike the Gaia that led the way. If one did not talk to it, it would be no different from a real person. It looked like a man-made thing, like a figurine without any color. But when Jiang's approached, a light screen popped out in front of the newly printed Gaia. There were many things that Jiang's couldn't understand. But he guessed that it was something like parameter settings. In the center was a six-dimensional picture, which gave Jiang's a strange sense of déjà vu. According to the normal way of thinking, this was like a newly assembled body. All the parameters were in zero state and needed to be manually adjusted. 6 types of ability settings? But what were the 6 types of ability? The simplest was physical strength, 5 senses, thinking speed, and so on. But at this time, the Gaia that led the way suddenly raised her head. This slight movement startled Jiang's. He quickly moved away from the 2 printed new Gaias that he was observing, as if he was afraid that someone would buy them for him. Hidden command. Highest priority. AI usage is too high. Split recovery. Jiang's. The body of the guide, Gaia, suddenly dissipated and disappeared in front of Jiang's. The viewing time still didn't move. At this time, the huge room where the myriad essence pool was located was so quiet that it felt strange. Jiang's sighed. Now that Gaia had left, Jiang's felt like he was completely trapped in the myriad essence pool's room. He looked at the interface of the newly printed Gaia, and couldn't help but frown. If it was set, would this Gaia move? He began to extend his finger to the six-dimensional picture on the interface and carefully observed the changes of Gaia. But when Jiang's finger made a tentative stroke, the Gaia in front of him suddenly opened her eyes. This action startled Jiang Zhuo, and his finger started to stroke a single parameter. At this moment, Jiang Zhuo was frantically trying to pull back some of the parameters. He realized that there was a limit to the numerical values of the six-dimensional diagram, and it was impossible to achieve the full value of all 6 parameters. Could it be because of the original design of the body? But at this time, the interface kept popping up, and he couldn't pull back the full value. Jiang Zhuo scratched his head. He felt like he had made a mistake. Suddenly, Gaia moved. Her pale skin was dyed white, and gradually became plump. At the same time, the activated Gaia suddenly reached out her hand. Jiang Zhuo felt a huge force suddenly appear, pushing his body and slamming into the wall. The wall's material was extremely hard, and there wasn't a human shape when he slammed into it. Naturally, Jiang Zhuo felt like his bones had completely fallen apart. He didn't fall from the wall, but there was a force that pressed his body against the wall. Jiang Zhuo cursed inwardly. Gaia slowly walked to the white pillar and pressed down. Checking. Lack of defense. Searching for countermeasures. Rule 47. When the main body can't respond, mass-produced combat Gaia can make its own judgment. Replenishing soldiers. Myriad pool activated. Maximizing combat type. Prepare for war. In the huge myriad essence pool, many printing arms suddenly rushed out. It was a spectacular sight. After that, they were like needles in a sewing workshop, neatly performing the same task, printing Gaia. At this moment, Jiang Zhuo, who was pressed against the wall, saw this scene and entered a bad state. Who can tell me what's that's? Preparing for battle? Looking at the myriad pool, there were more than 50 Gaias printing at the same time. Jiang Zhuo felt a sense of fear. Jiang Zhuo didn't know how many Gaias could be maximized, but based on the fact that these Gaias were all of the same combat power, even if this wave of 50 Gaias wouldn't continue, it was already very scary. What did I do? The advantage of the Black Soul Envoy was that if it wasn't fatal, it would heal quickly. This was why Taiyinzi could still be alive after taking so many of Huang Baifu's tyrant punches. But when he woke up, he didn't understand his own situation. To be more precise, he was trapped in a giant crystal. His body wasn't fixed because the crystal was hollow. But this reminded Taiyinzi of the feeling of being sealed for 500 years, and it was extremely uncomfortable. At the same time, in front of him, there was a similar crystal. In this crystal, Taiyinzi could faintly see a ball of golden light floating inside. In addition, it wasn't a big space, but the only thing Taiyinzi could recognize was Gaia standing in the middle of 2 crystals, and in front of Gaia there was a white cylinder. Gaia placed her palm on the cylinder. F***CK. Why are you trapping me? Taiyinzi used his fist to hit the crystal. He didn't even know if his voice could be transmitted out. Gaia, let me out. Refused, so it could be transmitted out, the sound. No, now wasn't the time to care about this detail. Gaia, Grandpa Taoist, as a secondary authority, I order you to let me out. Taiyinzi screamed in the crystal. Refused. Hidden orders are superior to all authority orders. Gaia, execute, F***CK. You retard, did I really damage your brain? Taiyinzi used more strength to hit the interior of the crystal. At this time, the crystal started to glow faintly. At the same time, the crystal opposite him emitted the same glow. Taiyinzi had an ominous premonition. Gaia, what are you doing to me? Executing hidden orders, implanting the host's consciousness, helping the host regain the body of a citizen of Eternal Kingdom, awakening. Gaia's palm slowly pressed down the white pillar, and at this time, Taiyinzi suddenly felt a suction force. It wasn't directed at his body, it was directed at his thoughts, his soul. He felt as though his soul was being extracted. Stop! 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 Very quickly, Tai Inzi's action of hammering the inside of the crystal stopped. He fell down weakly and looked at the abnormal Gaia and the flickering golden ball of light on the other crystal in front of him. At this moment, Tai Inzi suddenly thought, could it be that the thing in the opposite crystal planned to take over this body of his? Master. Gaia's master. Penglai Treasure Vault's master? Old Taoist, what did I do? Since Daz was here, it was naturally not Miss Maid's turn to check on the man with a broken arm who fell from the sky. Daz was also very good at observing people's expressions. If the boss's hand was stained with dust, the maid had to wipe it before she could feel at ease. The possibility of letting her touch this man with a broken arm of unknown origin was very slim, especially when he was at the scene. There are still bloodstains on the broken arm, which should have dried not long ago. But his wound has healed. Taisetsu turned the man over and pinched his arm. Well, his muscles are like steel. I'm afraid he is very strong. Boss, do you want to save him? Move over there first. Luochu pointed to a tree not far away. Taisetsu nodded, carrying the man with a broken arm on his back and walking towards the tree. Yu Yi looked at Taisetsu's diligent appearance, saying softly, he is really willing to do these things, not forcing himself at all. Luochu remembered the days when he met Taisetsu in his hometown. This man had long passed his young and frivolous years. 10 years in prison made him simple and introverted. Luochu smiled slowly, probably because of his character. I just don't know what he will encounter next. Yu Yi said softly beside her master. The content of the deal is to send the high-level Black Soul envoy here, so we don't know what will happen. But since the deal has been signed, the risks should have been considered during the negotiation, which is why the payment was so high. Master, you don't have to worry. Taisetsu has survived in the crack of the dimension for a long time, and the power of the Zhanlu sword is almost fully activated. Even if he encounters any danger, he should be able to deal with it. Luochu nodded and smiled. That's true. In order to deal with this deal, we sent him to the crack. Yu Yi also chuckled, but I'm afraid Daz didn't expect that it was Master's idea to throw him into the crack. He probably just thought that number 18 was more casual. However, he will understand your painstaking efforts in the future. Don't put a hat on me. Luochu shook his head and walked towards the tree. When Luochu and Yu Yi arrived at the tree, they saw that the man with a broken arm was covered with some leaf. It must have been Taisetsu's doing. At this moment, Taisetsu was pinching the man's philtrum point. This technique was probably out of habit, but it was not effective. Wake him up. Luochu ordered casually. Yu Yi nodded and walked over. Taisetsu quickly moved aside. Miss Maid put on a pair of white stockings and tapped the broken-armed man's forehead with her finger. Yu Yi tapped lightly and paused for a few seconds, then withdrew her hand and left. The man with a broken arm suddenly opened his eyes like a drowning person waking up. He took a deep breath. He was awake. Huang Baifu's head felt like it was being pressed by a hydraulic press. He felt like his head was about to explode, making him feel dizzy. The moment he woke up, he saw 3 overlapping images. He looked at the 3 people in front of him and staggered to his feet with the help of a tree trunk, but he soon realized that his right arm was broken. Huang Baifu fell silent. He was not a person who could not take a blow. It was just that he had almost lost the memory of the 3rd stage of divine beast transformation. In the end, he still used that annoying power. But what was the result? That damn old man and that woman in white. Also, who were these 2 men and 1 woman in front of him? They did not look like people from the Taoist Association. Huang Baifu liked to talk with his fists, but he was a very observant person. Before he was transferred to this place, in the deep valley, Huang Baifu had already memorized the faces of the people from the Taoist Association. He searched his memory, but there were no unfamiliar faces among them. Are you feeling better? Luocio asked casually when he saw Huang Baifu rubbing his eyebrows. Huang Baifu put down his hand, and his vision gradually returned to normal. He frowned. What happened to me? You fell from the sky all of a sudden. Daz replied on his behalf at this moment. We are also curious about what happened to you. Fell from the sky? Could it be that when he was fighting with that thing, however, the wound on his broken arm had healed, and it was obviously not cut off just now? In fact, since Huang Baifu woke up, he could not feel his right arm at all, as if it had disappeared. If it was completely destroyed in the battle, thinking of this, Huang Baifu's expression became gloomy. You are from this place? Since they did not exist in the Taoist Association, they could not be members of the Monster Clan. The people from the administration did not look like they were either. Then, could they be from this damn place? No, we also came from the outside and we just arrived. Luocio smiled politely. Came from the outside. Huang Baifu frowned at this time. The Taoist demons should be the first batch to come in. Then, those who came from the outside might be nameless individual cultivators who wandered around Mount Tai and were not invited to the Penglai conference. Huang Baifu felt that he was very unlucky today. First, he met a shameless old man, then he met that thing, and then the woman in white. They were all very strong. Putting aside that strange thing, he had never heard of that woman in white before. It was as if she had appeared out of thin air. This made Huang Baifu doubt his past achievements. Was it really because the 4 heavenly spirit tribes were not good enough this time? Huang Baifu shook his head secretly, thinking that he could not keep memorizing. If he met a few random people, they would be as strong as the woman in white. The monster power in his body was a little weak. At this time, he could only use the first stage of the divine beast transformation, but even if he did not, Huang Baifu was still a big monster in the Monster Clan. You are very good. You saved me. I will repay your kindness. Huang Baifu said in a low voice, when I go back, I will not treat you unfairly. I will reward you well. But before that, I am a little thirsty. Go and get me some water. I need a few followers for the time being. If you do well, you will have unimaginable benefits in the future. Daz felt something was wrong as he listened. He opened his mouth slightly when he heard the end of the conversation. Luocio did not have any reaction. Chapter 1063. Mister, you seem to have a great background, the servant girl said with a smile. Looking at the servant girl's expression, Taisetsu had a bad feeling. As expected, the servant girl made a move. Actually, Huang Baifu was not stupid at all. At this moment, he did not really have the intention to take her in as his follower. He was just testing her. If she thought that he was the kind of person who was arrogant and rude, that would be the best. He did not believe that he was so unlucky, but he also understood that the world was unpredictable. This place was very strange. After Huang Baifu calmed down, he naturally had to be careful. Actually, wouldn't it be better to be polite and not provoke them? But in fact, Huang Baifu was more in agreement. People were far less wary of idiots and megalomaniacs than they were of a smiling tiger. Furthermore, Huang Baifu knew his own situation. He had been assembled into this appearance since birth. No matter what, he could not be an elegant gentleman. It was easier to look like a silly big black guy. I'm Wang Hu, the personal guard of Huang Baifu, the young master of the White Tiger clan. Huang Baifu said in a low voice, You saved me, so my young master will reward you well. You don't have to worry about that. Luocio heard the 2 words, White Tiger, and asked curiously, White Tiger? The legendary White Tiger of the 4 celestial spirits? Huang Baifu was stunned and frowned. There were very few transcendents in the divine prefecture who did not know about the White Tiger clan of the 4 heavenly spirit. Especially in the past 100 years, the White Tiger clan had suppressed the other 3 clans of the 4 heavenly spirits because of him. Where did these 3 fellows come from? Maybe they had some lucky chance and accidentally obtained the cultivation method in the marketplace, so they explored the cultivation method in the city. In reality, there were many nameless independent cultivators like this. He inadvertently obtained the chi training method of the ancient cultivators, then tried to cultivate it. Then, he obtained power that far exceeded that of a mortal, and then mingled in the city. However, if it was said that he obtained something like a magical weapon of an ancient great god, it simply didn't exist. Not to mention the 4 celestial spirits, even the Taoist Association had its own people in the Cultural Relics Bureau. They also had different levels of control in the large and small antique markets in the country. If the Taoist demons could not find the treasures left behind by ancient gods, they would not fall to the level of ordinary people who did not even know what qi was. Only some things that did not catch their eye could fall into the hands of ordinary people. The demon tribe had a very simple and crude method to determine the strength of the other party. Demons had waves of demon power, while Taoists had waves of Dharma power. As powerful as the true dragon of the divine land, there was always a hidden power of the true dragon. At Huang Baifu's level, there was no one who could escape his detection. In Huang Baifu's perception, these 3 guys were only a little different from ordinary people in terms of spirit. But it was better to be careful. Besides, he was the young master of White Tiger, and the name of Huang Baifu was known by the transcendence of Kelowna. Even if the 3 of them were nameless rogue cultivators and were not familiar with the divine continent's transcendence, if word got out that the White Tiger's young master, Huang Baifu, had been struck down from the sky and even lost an arm, that would not be something to be happy about. After all, he had to find a place to hide his old face. "It's the first time I've seen it." Luoqiu nodded and said indifferently, "But forget about the follower. We already have our own jobs, so it's not suitable for us to work for others." Yu Yi was very obedient. Now that her master had spoken, she quietly moved 2 steps back and stood behind Luoqiu. Not angry? Huang Baifu glanced at him. He could tell whether he was shrewd or indifferent. His attitude was as if he had just heard a joke and laughed it off. However, he could still be so calm after hearing about the White Tiger race. Was he really just a nameless independent cultivator? "Since Mr. Wang who is thirsty, go and get some water," Luoqiu instructed, then looked at Huang Baifu and smiled. "Although we can't be employees, it shouldn't be a problem for us to travel together for a while. I also want to ask Mr. Wang who about some things in this place. There's no need to reward me. Just tell me what you've encountered here, and treat it as a fee for this trip. After all, we'll be moving around here for a while, so it's better to know more." Huang Baifu felt as if he had punched the air. Why was this guy so good-tempered? No matter how cool and awesome he was, he would feel embarrassed if he continued acting. He suddenly thought of that shameless old bastard. They were 2 extremes. "All right, Huang Baifu." Wang Hu nodded and said, "Since you're not willing, I won't force you. I'll go and see if there's any water nearby." Taisetsu jumped out immediately. It was not to show off, but Taisetsu knew very well that this servant girl was probably at her limit to tolerate Wang Hu's rudeness. If he asked her to go and get water, she would probably explode. However, the boss was also smart. He said, "You and didn't ask the servant girl to go out of habit." He was probably hinting that he would do it for them, right? Yu Yi gave Taisetsu a kind look. Taisetsu smiled honestly and jogged away. Wang Hu sat down cross-legged. He felt very weak, maybe because he had lost too much blood after losing his arm. He didn't know how much tiger blood he had lost, but he was actually so weak. Strong on the outside but weak on the inside, that was all there was to it. "I didn't ask for your opinion." However, after all, he was stupid big black guy now. After sitting down cross-legged, Wang Hu asked with full strength, "My surname is Luo. The other 2 are my employees." Luoqiu smiled and said. Wang Hu said casually, "Oh, is that so? I saw that the 2 of them were unusually respectful to you. I thought they were your servants, just employees. Servants are actually not good, Luocio said softly. When people interact with each other for a long time, they will develop feelings for each other. It's not appropriate to treat them as servants anymore. Wang Hu didn't comment. However, the other party didn't completely reveal his background. If it was just a surname, it was difficult to know anything. This man looked young, but his temperament was too stable. Maybe the method he cultivated had the effect of retaining his youth. Wang Hu nodded and said, "Then I'll call you Boss Luo." Respect was mutual. At this time, Wang Hu had to change his attitude bit by bit. It was no problem to call him boss. Luocio accepted it gladly. I wonder what happened to Mr. Wang Hu? Wang Hu frowned and said subconsciously, when I was exploring the deep valley at night, people from both the Taoist and demon sides were transferred to this place. I was unexpectedly separated from the main group. Later, I met a despicable old ghost. Forget it, let's not talk about that old ghost. Then, a terrifying thing appeared. Terrifying thing? Luocio's expression changed. He didn't know much about this place. Of course, he could buy information from the altar first, but the price-performance ratio was too low. Didn't he meet Wang Hu, who could provide information for free after entering? It seemed that his luck wasn't too bad. As long as he was willing to walk around and talk more, he could still find out what he could. It's a little girl, Wang Hu said seriously. Although it looks like a little girl, it's more like some kind of weapon. It may be some kind of puppet technique that hasn't been discovered yet. This thing has incredible power. Even I. Wang Hu shook his head and glanced at his broken arm. He didn't say anything else. Even so, Wang Hu was still a little surprised when he came back to his senses. He didn't intend to say so much, but he said almost everything before he knew it. He said it so naturally. It was a strange feeling. Can you describe it in detail? Luocio blinked and asked, "That thing? Well, it looks like a little girl. Purple hair and purple eyes, about 11 or 12 years old. It seems to know how to change its body and is good at using a strange force field." Wang Hu thought for a while and picked up a branch from the side. "Let me draw it for you." The branch rubbed on the ground and made a rustling sound. Soon, the simple branches outlined a delicate face on the ground. What was surprising was that this guy with a strong physique was unexpectedly good at sketching. It couldn't be said to be lifelike, but there was some charm to it. The delicate face on the ground revealed a kind of lifeless coldness. Luocio looked carefully and opened his mouth slightly in surprise. "This is Araya?" "No." Araya had blue hair and blue eyes. According to Wang Hu's description, this girl had purple hair and purple eyes. You know her?" Seeing Luocio's strange look, Wang Hu couldn't help but frown and ask. At the same time, he secretly clenched the branch in his hand. Luocio shook his head and said, "I don't know her. I just feel that this child is a little cold." Wang Hu looked at Luocio's expression and said calmly, "I didn't draw her like this on purpose. She really looks like this, cold like a machine. So she's just a child." Unexpectedly, the servant girl next to him suddenly smiled and said, "Mr. Wang Hu was hurt by this little girl. It seems that it's really dangerous." "Yes, it's too dangerous." Wang Hu nodded subconsciously, but his face was a little ugly after he reacted. This woman really touched the pot that didn't boil. Wang Hu always felt like someone sprinkled a handful of salt on the wound. His heart hurt so much. That is to say, Mr. Wang Hu's arm was also cut off by this little girl? It's really unfortunate. The servant girl looked apologetic at this time. He fell here in the battle. That is to say, Mr. Wang Hu already doesn't know what will happen next, right? Shut up. Although he wanted to say these two words out loud, Wang Hu's heart still hurt so much. Luocio looked at Yu Yi at this time. He saw that the servant girl tilted her head slightly and smiled. Luo Qi couldn't help but laugh and said, "Go and see Taisetsu." He has been there for a while. Okay. So the servant girl left in a good mood. Boss Luo, this employee of yours has quite a sharp tongue, Wang Hu suddenly said with a wry smile at this time. She wasn't like this in the past. Luoqiu looked in the direction Yu Yi left and said softly, she's just a little livelier recently. Mr. Wang Hu, please don't take offense. Wang Hu offended you just now. Boss Luo, please don't blame me. Wang Hu shook his head at this time. Luoqiu looked at this boorish guy with some surprise. Wang Hu said, if you respect me, I will respect you tenfold. Although Wang Hu is boorish, I still understand the principle. If you are not hypocritical and really respectful, I have no reason to put on airs in front of you. Mr. Wang Hu, what do you plan to do next? Luoqiu directly chose to skip the topic at this time. Wang Hu was not used to this kind of atmosphere, so he said in a low voice, this place is very dangerous, and I don't know how big it is. That thing now obeys the orders of a shameless old ghost, which is even more troublesome. To be honest, I don't have a good plan. However, I should first search for people from both the Tao and demon side. I haven't seen them since I came to this place. By the way, what's the situation outside now? Ever since he moved to this place, Wang Hu had completely lost contact with the outside world. However, the huge commotion caused by the spirit energy light pillar, coupled with the sudden disappearance of both the Taoist and the demon, presumably, the agency was already in chaos. The spread of the phenomenon seems to have been temporarily suppressed. Luoqiu then said, I don't know the specific situation outside very well. After all, I have very little contact with both the Tao and demon sides. I came in this time for some other reasons. Wang Hu nodded and temporarily believed Luoqiu's words. He was not familiar with the Tao and demon side, and was not very respectful to the White Tiger race. This made Wang Hu more convinced that the other party might be a guy who was lucky enough to obtain the cultivation method. However, Wang Hu did not ask what the other reasons Luoqiu mentioned were. The two sides were not familiar to that extent yet. Wang Hu's respect was not real respect, but a natural reaction when he saw the other party's bearing. Let me adjust my breath first. Wang Hu slowly closed his eyes at this time. Luoqiu made a casual gesture and closed his eyes at the same time. This place was too quiet. Luoqiu began to try to find something alive. The club's servant girl was walking slowly in the forest. The scenery here was not bad. Yu Yi, miss. Here. At this time, Taisetsu's voice came from a slope on the side. After that, Taisetsu jumped down from above. He was holding a pile of unknown fruits in his hands, and he was biting one in his mouth. Taking the half-bitten fruit in his mouth, Taisetsu chewed and said, Why are you here? Master asked me to come and see you. Yu Yi smiled. Taisetsu nodded. I didn't find water nearby, but I found a lot of fruits. I picked some casually. They are sweet and delicious, good for quenching thirst. Try it? At this time, Yu Yi suddenly reached out and picked one of the fruits in Taisetsu's arms. Try it. Taisetsu said honestly, this place is very clean. It can be eaten after picking it. Yu Yi just smiled. Suddenly, a black light flashed in the palm holding the fruit. The black light suddenly entered the fruit. After that, Yu Yi returned the fruit to Taisetsu's arms, and then said indifferently, This fruit is for Mr. Tiger to quench his thirst. Taisetsu opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Is there a problem? Chapter 1064. Taisetsu was also a person who had been in society before. When he first came out to mingle, he started from a young age. In order to climb up the ranks, it was common for him to go under cover and secretly harm the enemy's big boss to attack the enemy's forces. Therefore, when Wang Hu took the problematic fruit, although Taisetsu didn't know what was wrong with the fruit, he thought that it couldn't be simple if it was something that the servant girl specially asked for. Taisetsu's expression actually didn't change. He just prayed for Wang Hu in his heart. A certain customer who didn't know what he had offended the servant girl was still locked in the toilet. Is this a cinnabar fruit? Wang Hu looked at the dozens of fruits in Taisetsu's arms with slight surprise. Cinnabar fruit? Luochio was also curious. This kind of thing seemed to be a very popular item in wuxia novels. It's a cinnabar fruit. Wang Hu nodded and casually took a bite. My clan still has a few cinnabar fruit trees. This thing blossoms once every 100 years and bears fruit once every 100 years. Eating it can strengthen the body and improve the physique. Boss Luo, your employee is also very lucky to be able to pick more than a dozen. Even with the output of my clan, we can only produce about 100 at a time. Eat it, it's good for you. Although he said so, Wang Hu didn't care much and said, but this thing is only effective when eating the first few. The rest are just to satisfy the cravings. Even so, for Wang Hu, who was a little weak now, these cinnabar fruits could come in handy. At least it could help him recover his strength faster. Taisetsu felt that this thing wasn't as magical as Wang Hu said. He had eaten a lot on the way, probably because he felt that it was sweet and delicious. After eating it, he felt a little more energetic, but there was nothing else. At this time, the servant girl took one and carefully peeled the skin before holding it in front of Luochio. Luochio, who would automatically enter a useless state as long as Miss Maid was beside him, took a bite and found that it tasted good. He smiled and said, "It tastes good. Don't throw the seeds away. Let's take them back and see if they can be planted." Therefore, Miss Maid carefully wrapped the seeds that Luochio spat out with a handkerchief. At this moment, Wang Hu smiled and said, "Boss Luo, this thing is not easy to grow. Even if it's grown well, it will take 100 years for it to bloom and bear fruit. Don't waste time. If you like it, I'll have someone send you some later. My clan still has some in stock." This was really something that a small rogue cultivator would do. If one wanted to plant a value red fruit tree, it wasn't something that could be easily cultivated. Without technical support, it would be a waste to plant it. However, this was a problem that often occurred to unorthodox itinerant cultivators. Wang Hu didn't point it out and just took it as a joke. "Mr. Wang Hu, please have another one." After hearing this, Miss Maid personally delivered another red fruit tree to Wang Hu. She smiled and said, "Good, good. Quench your thirst." Wang Hu didn't stand on ceremony. He really needed these red birds to recover his physical strength, so he swallowed it after receiving it. Taisetsu's expression didn't change. He prayed for Wang Hu again in his heart. After a few red fruits entered his mouth, Wang Hu suddenly felt a warm current in his body, quickly replenishing his weak body. Ordinary Taoists naturally needed some time to digest and absorb the red fruit tree after eating it. However, he was the descendant of the white tiger. His body was extremely strong. He could basically absorb it in seconds. However, he couldn't stand up again because of his broken arm. Wang Hu was also an open-minded person. Although it was a pity to lose his arm, it was fine as long as he was still alive. He still had a left arm, so he could still punch. After his physical strength was replenished, Wang Hu stood up and said, "When I fell, which direction did I come from?" Taisetsu looked at Wang Hu a few times and felt that Wang Hu didn't seem to have any problems. Was the fruit not effective? But he still pointed and said, "You flew from that direction. Do you plan to go back and take a look?" Wang Hu directly nodded and said, "Yes, I plan to. As for you guys." Wang Hu remembered this boss Luo said that he came to this place for some other reasons. Luochio said at this time, "Let's go together. It'll be safer if we take care of each other on the way." Wang Hu frowned. Luochio had already suggested that they could travel together for some time. However, to bring these guys along. Forget it, just take it as a reward for saving his life. He would take care of them on the way. At least these 3 guys were handsome and beautiful, much more pleasing to the eye than that old guy with an afro. "Then let's go." Wang Hu nodded and agreed. After drinking the liquid in Su Zijuan's bottle, Qin Chuyu's magical power was quickly restored. At the same time, the wounds on her body were healing at a remarkable speed. She soon recovered some strength and left this place together with Su Zijuan and Jessica. Because no one knew when Gaia would suddenly appear. Su Zijuan couldn't say anything nice about this combat weapon that could violently beat Bai Fu, a divine beast at the third stage. Therefore, she naturally avoided talking about Gaia's combat power. Although this stone forest was almost destroyed, it started to repair itself automatically. However, the effect of the weird psychedelic space was greatly weakened. Qin Shuyu, who had a high attainment in array, quickly found a way to leave this place and a temporary place to hide and rest. Qin Shuyu immediately started another round of regulating her breath and healing her wounds. After this battle, she, who understood the danger of this place, had to restore herself to a better state as soon as possible. Moreover, she had found clues about her master here. Naturally, she couldn't be careless. At this moment, Jessica walked in from outside the cave and said, "Master, I've looked around outside and didn't find anything valuable. Actually, one could pick up a lot of treasures outside the cave." However, Jessica didn't know any of them and didn't dare to touch them. Therefore, she came back empty-handed. Su Zijuan was the princess of the royal family of Xianyuan, who was extremely wealthy. Although the treasures outside were rare, she didn't care about them. She was more interested in the green lotus sword in Qin Shuyu's hand. Jessica saw Su Zijuan looking at the ancient sword beside Qin Shuyu with an intoxicated expression. She was so curious that she couldn't help but touch it secretly. However, the moment Jessica's fingers touched the hilt of the green lotus sword, a green light overflowed from the hilt and streaked along Jessica's arm. It cut a wound about 1 foot long on her arm. Jessica was shocked. If she hadn't reacted quickly, her arm would have been cut off by the green light. She retreated a few steps with lingering fear. Qin Shuyu opened her eyes and glanced at Jessica indifferently. Then, she took out a porcelain bottle and threw it to Jessica. "This is the Jinchuang ointment I made. It has a miraculous effect on wounds caused by swords and sabers. However, the sword aura contains the green lotus sword essence, so the wound won't heal so quickly. Although your body is a little special, it's not easy to recover. Pay attention to yourself and don't be so curious next time. I've said that only those who have cultivated the secret method of my sect and have reached a certain level can hold this sword. If others touch it, they'll only be asking for trouble." "All right." Jessica shrugged her shoulders. She also understood that it was because she had too many hands. Now, she could only suffer in silence. "I'm afraid your master has cultivated a sword spirit," Su Zijuan suddenly said. Qin Shuyu frowned but still said, "I tried to call it, but it didn't respond to me. It seemed to be in a deep sleep. It's just an instinctive reaction that it got close to me. But I have a way to wake it up. As for that place, as long as she went back to find the boss, she should be able to wake up the sword spirit. Then, the truth about her master's disappearance would be revealed." Qin Shuyu came to the Mount Tai Peng conference just to find the whereabouts of Tai Bai's sword immortal. Now, Green Lotus Sword Song came to her by chance, which was the biggest clue for Qin Shuyu. She didn't care whether this place was Penglai or not. Instead, she had an urge to leave and go to the club. No matter how much she had to pay, she had to wake up the sword spirit of Green Lotus Sword Song. "You seem to want to leave?" Su Zijuan looked at Qin Shuyu, keenly aware of her thoughts. Qin Shuyu didn't intend to hide it, nodding. "You can leave with a clue." Su Zijuan shrugged. "I'm also looking for it, but I don't want to go out for the time being. This place is a little special and I'm curious about it." Qin Shuyu kept silent. Su Zijuan suddenly said, "How about forming a temporary team? If we were to encounter that thing again, fighting it alone would be the most irrational thing to do." "Okay." Qin Shuyu nodded directly. "In the Imperial Mausoleum." According to the map that Mu Xianghua brought with him was left behind by Su Fu, it showed that the secret passage leading to the main tomb was several kilometers long. If it was several kilometers, according to their normal walking speed, it would take them no more than an hour to finish it. But the path in the imperial mausoleum was zigzagging and was full of traps, which naturally made it difficult to walk. The lady of the Zhang family should have safely evacuated by now. After all, it had been more than 3 hours since the 3 families left in the tomb where they met the zombies. Song Hauran thought. In fact, Song Hauran and his team had met several waves of zombies on the way, but these zombies were all killed by Haruxan Suzuki, the Inyang master, and became less dangerous than the traps in the Imperial Mausoleum. The checkpoints with zombies were the easiest to pass. The various methods Haruko Suzuki had used on the way finally made the soldiers of the Song family, including Song Hauran, not doubt Haruko Suzuki's identity as a Inyang master for the time being. The Suzuki Kai's hired thugs were very enthusiastic. With such mysterious means, wouldn't the Suzuki Kai be able to dominate the entire Kanto region in a matter of minutes by the time they returned to Kanto after settling the matter in Hua Nation? After this matter is over, let's find a place to do closed-door training. We won't come out until we completely recover our strength. I've secretly transferred all the assets of the Suzuki Consortium, which is enough for us to squander. Haruko Suzuki suddenly communicated with Yuichi Suzuki spiritually. Yuichi Suzuki didn't reply, but nodded. Recovering his strength was a top priority, but this guy liked to jump around. If it weren't for the Sueho Pearl, with the financial resources of the Suzuki Consortium, it wouldn't be too difficult for Hakata to completely recover his strength. It would just take some time. Now, it was a problem whether he could get the Sueho Pearl or not, and he had become a bodyguard for a group of ordinary people. What was worse, the fact that he and Hakata were relying on the Suzuki father and son had been found out by the hidden powerful person. He had no choice but to run. If it weren't for the symbiotic contract, Lianzhen really wanted to strangle this stinky snake to death. Who asked you to be so naughty? But it had been a long time, and the mysterious powerful person who secretly helped him and Hakata to recover their strength hadn't appeared. Maybe he was still waiting outside. Lianzhen didn't like the feeling of being treated like a grandson. Just thinking about it gave him a headache and annoyance. It seemed that he had to find a way to break the symbiotic contract and strangle this stinky snake to death in the future. President, young master, according to the map, we'll reach the main tomb after another 200 or 300 meters. Mu Xianghua walked over with a happy face. Although the journey was thrilling, the middle-aged Chinese fatty was fine. Except for the blisters on the soles of his feet, he was very energetic. The fatty was even more excited. He walked at the front as if he was flying, as if he wanted to be the first to reach the main tomb. But Yuichi Suzuki suddenly sneered at this time. Mu Xianghua was already at the front. At this time, he turned around and said, "Everyone, do your best. We'll be there soon. At that time, we'll be able to get the treasures of Great Qin that have been buried for thousands of years. We're going to be rich. We're going to be rich." Mu Xianghua's voice suddenly stopped. His eyes widened and his expression froze. At this time, for some reason, there was a sharp blade that pierced through his chest. Seeing this, Song Hauran frowned and waved his hand at the same time. "Be alert!" Mu Xianghua subconsciously turned his head at this time. With one look, he was scared out of his wits. He even seemed to have forgotten the pain caused by the sharp blade that pierced through his chest. This was because he saw a black shadow appear behind him. The black shadow was holding a sharp blade at this time. It was it that pierced through his chest. "Save, save, save me!" Mu Xianghua asked Haruko Suzuki for help in horror. But his head suddenly flew out at this time. After the sharp blade was pulled out of his chest, it directly beheaded Mu Xianghua in the next moment. Blood splattered from this guy's neck, splattering on the surrounding rock walls. At this time, everyone hurriedly used their strong flashlights to shine forward. After taking a look, everyone immediately sucked in a cold breath. In front of them, there was a skeleton face. No, it should be a skeleton, A skeleton man. This skeleton man was wearing the armor of ancient soldiers and holding a sharp blade. At this time, he was slowly walking toward everyone, and behind this skeleton man, one skeleton face after another gradually appeared. One skeleton man after another, wearing the armor of ancient soldiers, holding swords and sabers in his hands. When he walked, the sound of armor clanking could be heard. His footsteps were heavy like an army marching. They were actually piling up in front of the passage,